What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favalli, back at long last with my certified fantabulous thermonuclear AF, handy as fuck co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes, installing dishwashers, taking care of kids, handling his own work. Dude is a superhero. Solo parenting, or was solo parenting for a few days. We are here to do our NBA trade deadline primers. We're doing something a little different this year. We normally split it up by division and publish it as 6 separate episodes so that we can maybe make some money off the audio. We said, fuck that this year. We're doing it by conference. We're doing the entire Eastern Conference. And so I'm asking all of you, whether you're listening for the first time, you're probably not listening to this long intro. If you are a first-time listener, returning listeners, share the ever-living hell out of this however you can. Like it and comment on YouTube. Link it to other people. Tweet it. Bump our tweets on Twitter. Make this thing the most engaged with episode we have, because it's a bear and we are making some sort of concession by not separating it. And we're also forcing ourselves to be a little bit more prudent with the time as well, because now we can't spend 10 minutes on every team. Otherwise you'd be sitting here for 90 hours. That's about it. Grant, how the heck are you doing though before we get started?
I'm doing well. I like to think, based on what you were saying earlier, that there must be, it's fun to imagine that there are people that just pick out new opodcasts and only listen to the intros just to see, like, am I going to be into this?
That's what,
as opposed to skipping right to whatever the SEO buzzwords are.
We probably, I think, because we talk about ourselves at the beginning, which is more of like that's how we interact with listeners about this on Discord. We probably do miss out on newcomers who are sitting here and it's, oh, they're 120 seconds in. They've said jack shit about the NBA trade deadline. So I'm skipping. I do timestamp it though, so I don't feel bad. And that just fits with the mounting motif of me not giving a fuck. Whereas podcast is fun, how we want to do it. I like talking to you. And this intro could be longer if Grant and I didn't spend like 40 to 50 minutes every single time rapping off air.
Yeah, that's all behind the paywall.
Welcome, everybody, for keeping this tight. So which division did you want to start with? We're still going to we'll separate them by divisions, but there's going to be one giant Eastern Conference podcast. What division do we want to start with here?
Let's go Southeast, just because that also gets us to the letter A for the Atlanta Hawks to start that division off.
All right. So the Atlanta Hawks, this is just going to be pretty free flowing. We'll talk about numbers, cap situations if we need to, trade targets, whatever. What are your thoughts about the Atlanta Hawks leading into the trade deadline? What do they need? What should they do? What are they going to do?
I mean, it's almost a shame. I was going to say it's almost a shame we're starting here, except I just decided that we would start here 40 seconds ago. Because I think,
Dan, why are you making us start here?
I think, well, we got to just, if we can go with letter A to start, we have to. I think it would have been more interesting maybe to hit them after we got through a couple of other teams, just because had we randomly selected them, chances are they would have been buyers, because that's what most of the league is right now, I think, with a few exceptions. And by contrast, I think Atlanta, I was just thinking about this more today, could be pretty uniquely positioned as a team that should sell and happens to have like a handful of pieces led by DeJounte Murray that, because of the way the market is, you might get like really good value or even like above market value if there's enough of a bidding war for some of these guys. Like Bogdanovic, I think, is someone that fits anywhere. Murray, you could say that about as well. Like even guys like Capella and Hunter are both, not on ridiculous contracts that last forever and they're proven starters, but the Hawks should be looking to move all of those guys. And that's what all the reports indicate they're doing. So I think they're kind of unique, not totally uniquely positioned, but sort of uncommonly positioned as a kind of maybe a very, high leverage seller with a bunch of buyers out there that they could maybe, gin up some pretty good offers from.
Yeah. And look, they should be sellers because they are bad and they're not really that fun to watch. And they do have quality players on the team. They've been banged up at points, but they specifically, even though ownership will never cop to this, care about not paying a luxury tax. And they, I think, have like $9 million in room under the luxury tax for next season before factoring in the Sadiq Bey contract if they want to keep him. And it's not just about next season. It's about, Jalen Johnson's going to be on a new deal in 25, 26. You have DeJounte Murray's extension kicking in next year. That's reasonable enough. But Onyeka Okongwu's money is kicking in next season. You're going to get progressively more expensive, and they don't want to pay the tax. They're not good enough. I'm not going to, try and save billionaires money, but this is not a team that should be paying the tax anytime soon. I'm interested they could be the team that defines the deadline just because there's a dearth of sellers, as you mentioned, and Toronto may have already just played its selling chip. There's no guarantee, we'll get to them, that they move Pascal Siakam. If the offers aren't great for Zach LaVine, or even if they move Zach LaVine, it feels like there might be a market of one team, being the Lakers, there. And the Hawks have multiple players, DeAndre Hunter. The report was everyone but Trae Young can be had, which would lead me to believe. I think they also mentioned Jalen Johnson as being untouchable. Probably smart, but if they could probably move him if they're worried about money in the coming years, they probably get really good value for him. But so they could even move Onyeka Okongwu. They have Clint Capella. They have Bogdan Bogdanovic. I personally don't think Trae Young should be off the table, but if you're looking to reorient your roster around him, I do think the DeJounte Murray partnership, it hasn't panned out, I would say in large part because I don't think the personnel around it is built to help it pan out. But if you need to be that ultra specific and you think the backcourt's too small and you're treating Murray too much like your primary wing defender while also asking him to shoulder this, primary point of attack defender while also asking him to shoulder this massive burden on offense, and he's been great on offense this year, you should move him. I would just throw to you is, what are you looking for then in return? Is this a team, they're no longer linked to Siakam? Like, are they going to be looking for actual guys, or is this a team that should just load up on picks, especially because they have some of their own picks owed to San Antonio in the coming years?
Yeah, I think you kind of can't have it both ways. And so since I'm making the case that they should be really opportunistic sellers, I don't think a seller in their position should be looking for, how do I get someone that's like as good as DeJounte Murray, but plays a position that makes more sense on this team, that's in his late 20s or whatever. I think it's, and this is maybe the, most analysts, we oversimplify, but it's like, just get picks, get young players, strip off a bunch of this salary that you don't want, which is not that easy because you've got to make the money match, generally speaking. So, but I would just be pivoting towards, like, yeah, if you're going to keep Trae Young around, what kind of young pieces make sense next to him? How do we get the picks that we can maybe package together for a current star that makes sense next to him? I'm not looking to kind of reshuffle. I think I'm looking to kind of trim the fat and do like a soft rebuild, I guess is what you might have to call it.
And I think regardless of even if you need Murray, the wings are where it really needs to be upgraded. I think you can get by with your big man rotation of having Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, and even Capella there. But like the DeAndre Hunter, you have Bogdanovic, you're not playing AJ Griffin. Is that someone a team could buy low on or buy medium on at this point? I feel like, he's at least intriguing as an offensive prospect. Who do you think is the most likely player to be traded on this roster? I'd Saddiq Bey penciled in just because he's headed towards RFA, and I don't necessarily know why you pay him when I don't think he gives you enough defensively.
I think I'm maybe being a little bit too much a prisoner of the moment in saying it, but like, it seems like the momentum is building towards Murray. I think Jake Fisher recently, I don't know, when are you going to put this up, tomorrow on Friday or when? So like Jake Fisher on Thursday basically made I think it's an interesting point, and it's kind of right. Like Siakam, it might just make sense for Toronto to keep him and try to re-sign him, and LaVine has no market. And so Murray might just be like the biggest name that moves. And so again, that's good for the Hawks because that means you're going to get probably more than you would have otherwise for him. So
do they get as much as they gave up for him though?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if the value of first rounders has changed enough in like the intervening, what has it been, less than 2 years? But like in a post Donovan Mitchell, post Rudy Gobert, post Murray trade world, I don't know if teams are throwing three at first and a swap in deals anymore. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, there are some teams, and first of all, compared to Zach LaVine, it's so easy to find intriguing DeJounte Murray trade destinations. I even like him, the thing that you didn't spoil, I love him in Golden State. I think that's a perfect fit. I have a 3-team trade. I'll save it for the West because I brought the wrong phone upstairs with me, so it's on my phone. But I think he would help them out a lot. But like the 2 teams that I'm looking at is if you were really just looking to, well, we want a goulash, like just this like stew of picks. Utah, because they can trade out like these lower leverage picks if they want or protect the hell out of them. Or even Orlando would be kind of interesting because he is an offensive upgrade over Markelle Fultz when he's healthy, Anthony Black, even Jalen Suggs type minutes. So maybe you could get 3 or the equivalent of 2+ first round picks for him, but they're not going to be like those Hawks 25 and 27 picks. And I don't know if you saw the report that San Antonio might be interested in Murray. Murray doesn't seem like he enjoyed it there too much. That feels more about like well, we can get him for less, and we're also going to make this team worse in the
Yeah.
process, and we own their picks. That's what that felt like.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to get even a single pick that's as valuable right now as the 25 or 27 Hawks pick is.
No, I mean, they might get one. It's hard to say. I think among the many things that's interesting about this deadline is I think we will get sort of a referendum on what first round picks are worth now.
Yeah.
Because it's been kind of at least in flux over the last couple of years. And, who knows, maybe, with the Thunder in Utah just sitting out there, like not knowing what to do with all their first, like we may see another big trade that involves 4 or 5 first, but like, I don't know that those two going nuts with their picks would reset the market. I'm really curious to see, like, the Anunoby trade was really instructive because, like, for a while there, the stupid number was 4 firsts. So they were given, we don't know the nature of those firsts. We don't know how legit that report was, but it wasn't uncommon to hear Mikal Bridges, oh, there's offers for 3 or 4 firsts or something like that. And then, Anunoby goes for like players instead, which is like a weird thing on its own, given the recent like nature of a lot of big trades. But yeah, I think Murray is likely to move just based on the reporting and based on like the logic of it. It's just the Hawks might just really be in a lucky position, ironically, because they've been such a disappointment this year. But like, if you've got the guy that everybody wants and can fit and like is making a really reasonable salary, like you're just in a good spot. And so not only like is he likely to be traded, I think they really like just should, because I don't know that his value is going up from this point.
I will say, to wrap them up, because we want to get in specific targets for team, this team is just impossible to do it without knowing what they sort of look like after. If you're going to move Murray, it should be, if you're moving him to the Lakers, you should really push for Austin Reeves. I don't think they give him up for Murray, though. If he's moving to the Warriors, I actually would push for Moody over Kuminga. Just, you have Jalen Johnson, you have Okongwu. Do you really need Kuminga? If you can get both, sure. And then if you're going to send him to the Knicks, you need to, like, Quentin Grimes needs to be in that deal for you. And then there's like, I don't really know if like they're probably not going to love Akbaji from Utah. You're going to want to build that around picks. Like, those are kind of the 3 prospects where if you're moving Murray, I don't think Orlando would give up Anthony Black for Murray. I probably wouldn't.
No.
Next team, though, probably a lot easier team to tackle. LaMelo Ball is returning. We're on to the Charlotte Hornets, by the way, in case anybody didn't see that one coming. I have them listed. So we didn't do buyers or sellers. We have the Hawks as sellers. The Hornets, they're sellers. And I think they should be sellers. They're bad. But they don't actually have too much to sell. Terry Rozier is balling right now. And the fact that he's been doing it without LaMelo Ball, which is not really something that happened last year, that's going to drive up his trade value, even on a contract that it's a little steep for someone who does what he does. He has, after this season, he has like 2 years and what is it, like $40-something million left, and most
51.5 for
51.5, and most of it is guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
But there are teams that just like the way he's shooting this year, and he'll at least try on defense. I think you absolutely should try to move him if you can. Gordon Hayward's expiring contract, it feels like they're going to be tracking towards a buyout because I don't think they want to take on bad money. But if there's a team out there that's either willing to send you some seconds with another expiring contract, or just like, as an example, if the Nets want to get off of Ben Simmons' money and they're willing to compensate you for it, you should be in a position to consider. And you should be listening on anyone who's not LaMelo or Brandon Miller. And that includes Mark Williams, who's dealing with a back injury, so his value might be at the nadir. Beyond Rozier and Gordon Hayward, are there many interesting players that's like, a healthy Cody Martin or maybe a Nick Richards is someone looking to take a flyer in a backup 5. And then my dark horse would be, I know they have Miles Bridges on this team, but his bird rights don't transfer. And so if you're a team that's trading for him, it probably is a rental unless you're going to have cap space this year. And PJ Washington then becomes more interesting for me. Someone who can toggle between the 4 and the 5 for you.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you mentioned Rozier off the bat, because like I was just thinking of him as like, you think about Murray this way a little bit too, as like an alternative to Zach LaVine. If you're just not interested in the remaining 3 years and what is it, 130 something, $140 million left on that deal. Like Terry Rozier is going to make 51.5, 49.8 guaranteed over the next 2. How much worse is Terry Rozier really than Zach LaVine? Especially if what you're asking both of them to do is be like a third option. Like, not that much. Like, it's Zach LaVine is a better player than Terry Rozier, like full stop. But I mean, if you're concerned about that money, which obviously everyone is, or else Levine would be on a different team by now. Rozier is like a pretty sweet like consolation prize, or
Yeah.
poor man's version of that will actually defend. Like that's the thing. Like I mean, as an alternative to Levine, I think anyone that was like remotely interested in him has to be looking at Rozier. But yeah, I also like the PJ Washington pick too. I think he also has a lot of that, like he'll fit kind of whatever you need him to be as long as he's somewhere between like your fifth and eighth guy, which he's paid reasonably enough to sort of occupy
Yeah,
that
3
role
years
without
and
it.
48 is nothing. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's like that's not even like that's not starter money. It just isn't. So I think
but
he's a nice fit too.
I would be curious what he fetches though, because his efficiency is just all the way down
Well,
right
plus the
now.
market over the summer kind of told you, right? I mean, he was restricted, but it's like nobody. It didn't seem like anybody was coming in to bowl Charlotte over with an offer sheet they wouldn't match. So
And
I don't know what his value is, to be frank.
and the priority for this team just needs to be picks. They don't
Yeah.
have an extra first round pick. They technically owe a first round pick, but it's lottery protected the next 2 years. It's not headed anywhere before it turns into 2 seconds. And so I think Rozier gets you a first round pick, even with the balance of his money there. I don't know about, maybe PJ Washington would get you a lower level one. So like those are you're not getting a first round pick for Miles Bridges. You're not getting a first round pick for Gordon Hayward unless you're taking back really, really bad money. But that needs to be the priority. And if you're looking at actual players, I understand that they basically need everything at this point. Like, can you get is Brandon Miller the second creator alongside the Melo, or do you still need to find that guy? I would just target, like, you have Brandon Miller, but like, let's get in some just like defensive minded perimeter players. And it's, is Isaac Okoro available in Cleveland, or, the fact that they even just punted kind of on like the Dennis Smith Jr. minutes this year, like, should they be the team that just takes a flyer on Killian Hayes? Because they didn't bring back DSJ, just to give him some, especially Mel's not going to be hurt anymore, but just to try them out on offense, but to get their defense in there, get a look before restricted free agency. It's like they should be in the sort of the second draft mode, because I don't even think, let's say if the Knicks, I guess you could get someone like a Quentin Grimes from the Knicks if you're trading Terry Rozier. That's probably fair to say, but it's just like, that's what you should be. You should be in the market more so for tangible picks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's funny. I was thinking like, gosh, who's like a distressed, like high draft pick recently that it would be worth the second draft kind of theory flyer? It's like someone like James Book. Oh, right. They have James Booknight. Like someone like that just their team is ready to call it quits. And it's like, yeah, he's got the draft pedigree. Why not? Right. Like just the James Wiseman theory for the Pistons, like that kind of thing. Like, oh, what the hell? Like, we're going to be bad. Let's just see if this guy figures it out someplace new.
Most likely player to be traded for you on this team before we move on.
It would have been Hayward for a while, but I think that's just like you said, that ship has sailed. I guess I will go Rozier. I think he has the broadest appeal,
And Hayward, do you think, this is a larger question, so it's Hornets related, but the fact that he can't sign with like teams past the first apron once he hits the buyout market, since he's making more than the mid-level, do you think that makes it less likely that he's bought out? Or is it kind of just like, well, I mean, I look at a bunch of these teams that are still like he could still help in there. Like the Lakers could technically fit him in off the buyout. The Knicks could, and that might be a team that he helps. So I think he still gets bought out if he's not moved. But I'm just wondering from your end, do you think that those limitations on what would be the upper tier teams that a lot of these guys might decide to sign with, if it was a Milwaukee or the Clippers, I look at it as though if you go to those teams, your minutes, I mean, in Milwaukee this year, maybe not, but like for a lot of these teams, you wouldn't play a lot of minutes. So you find the balance of, all right, well, the teams that can actually sign me are the ones that could probably play me the most minutes too.
Yeah, it's interesting like that. You're always looking for what are the unintended consequences of CBA changes. And it might be that it's kind of punitive. I mean, this is not like no one's going to weep for Gordon Hayward because like, oh, your team wants to pay you money to not have to play. Like, that's too bad. You don't have a lot of options. Feel sorry for you. But like, that does seem like maybe one of the unintended consequences is like, maybe it doesn't make as much sense to proceed how you maybe would have under the old rules if like however many teams just can't sign him, because that's going to be an interesting thing to track with the CBA. Yeah, like I bet he gets bought out just because like who's got the salary and the assets to like make that work.
I don't want to spoil the team, because I actually like him on a certain team that's trying to get better but shouldn't be getting better. So you could get him and get better without harming your future. And that's just I'll leave it at
what a
that.
mystery tease that is. My
On
head
to the Miami Heat, though.
on to the Miami Heat. So basically, my thought on them is they're buyers, obviously. I think they need to target a guard. I think it's a guard, but like a shot creator, really, just an offensive, someone on offense that pass, dribble, shoot. That like one of the quiet reasons behind the Heat being as solid as they've been this year, despite injuries to a lot of key guys, is Kyle. Maybe I was talking to you about this. I can't remember. Is that Kyle Lowry's been good and like durable, and
And
I
then
don't know.
hurt. Well, he got
Well,
hurt again. Yeah.
was. I don't know how much you want to, I guess, actually, I do know how much you want to bank on that, which is not very much at all, continuing. So that just exacerbates the need for someone that can come in and create shots in the backcourt. I don't think they are in a position where they would look, I don't know. I was going to say like flipping hero seems like we're kind of past talking about that, but maybe that's something that's never going to go away.
Well, so the Donovan Mitchell rumors, which I did tackle in a previous pod, if he did ask for out this year, which I don't think he will. I know people think he wants to be in New York, Miami. Maybe he does. I just feel like the Cavs will revisit that over the offseason because they might have some other decisions to make with their dual big setup.
Let's put a pin in Mitchell till we get to Cleveland, because I know that's all we're going to talk about. I have thoughts on that too.
Okay, but so I think that is like that's the type of move you move Hero in as salary matching on a team that could use him. Otherwise, they're also up. They're only like $4.5 million away from the second apron. It's like that's something that's going to factor into how they operate with their business. I'm with you on biggest need. I could see. I mean, I look at it. I'm like, they really do like a frontline partner next to Bam, but it's just like a lot of the stuff they're throwing out there is working anyway. And like Caleb Martin will presumably eventually be healthier at some point. Also, wild because you mentioned Kyle Lowry. Jaime Jaquez leads this team in total minutes this season. Lowry and Duncan Robinson are second and third. And like the Heat are still just chugging along. And so do you even expect them to make a move? Because everyone's mentioning like they could be a Rozier team. And in theory, yeah, they could. But as you mentioned with Lowry, what is their truly expendable salary matching fodder in a deal that's not for, you trade Hero or Robinson or Kyle Lowry's expiring if you're getting a star. But if you're not getting a star, is it like, let's say Bojan Bogdanovic would be very interesting here. But like, how the fuck are you getting there? Are you going to give up Kyle Lowry for that?
That's the thing. Lowry is the salary that you're talking about, just under 30 million expiring. Like, but one, if he does continue to matter for you, like, what his like guys want a title, like he's who you want in a playoff series in theory, even if he's like closer to 40 than you want your lead guard to be. But that's the salary that's got to go. Cause like, if it is say Bogdanovic or whatever, and the Hawks want off long-term money, like, I don't know. I guess Bogdanovic is probably a better player, but like he's got his own durability concerns, at least, in years past. Like I want to default to say the Heat are going to make a move because they always seem to figure out how to do something, but it is a little trickier than maybe it seems like it ought to be, because like you said, there's not a lot of great options that they would give up and definitely get better by, swapping them for whoever they're getting in that same salary bracket. And two, like, how much do you want to mess with this? Because like Jaquez has been great, and like Duncan Robinson is reborn, and it's like, I don't know. I think you want to add on the margins, I guess. Maybe that's the answer, is we don't just go try to get the guy who's going to be our third or fourth best player or something like that. Maybe you're going for an eighth guy or something.
I generally agree, except Jimmy Butler's 34. Is
sure.
what I keep coming back to. And so it's like, if it's not now, when? And so that's what this team has to answer. Who do you think is their most likely player to be traded?
It's so hard. I guess I'll say Lowry, but I don't what do you think? I don't love that pick.
I think it has to be Lowry too, because they're weirdly, or is it sneakily like Caleb Martin, just that mid-end salary, and that's how you're going to futz and fiddle on the margins? Or is it, well, why would we do that when his value's probably dipped and he was so important during the finals run? And just like Duncan Robinson's too important right now. So it has to be Lowry, unless you think it's going to be Hero as part of some move that we haven't foreseen. And like the Heat, I think they can do a better job this summer of dictating the buyer's market, where they can throw more aggressive offers on the table. Whereas right now, their most aggressive offer is not going to get them Lowry Marketing, who I also think would be a perfect fit. Like it's
sure.
They I guess my point is right now, they don't have the assets to make players who aren't available. like some of these other teams would.
I do. I mean, I like this for a lot of teams, but I like the idea of Murray there. I just don't know what you're giving the Hawks that gets them interested. And I don't think the Heat
Lowry and picks gives them cap relief after this season. Yep,
but
and you'd actually need to send back more money to Miami because Murray's so cheap.
Right. That's part of the thing. I can already tell I'm going to mention Murray like all the time on this just because he's in my head. Who's next? Orlando.
The Orlando Magic. I have them as buyers.
I
think they're one of the teams, though, in the vein of the Thunder, where it's like we don't expect them to do anything big because it's still very early in their timeline, but they need to just get someone who can open up the floor for everybody else in the half court, specifically make things easier on Paolo Banchero, who just the fact that he's as good as he is, operating within the confines that he is wild to me. I know people harp on his efficiency, and like that's been perking up anyway lately, but the way that the dude can get to the foul line or even generate his own shot, I'm all in on the Paolo Banchero experience. I think you could go so many different routes here. It's just DeJounte Murray could help them if you wanted to go like, let's upgrade the point guard. Terry Rozier be a really good fit here. Buddy Hield, if he gets sent out in a Siakam trade to Toronto, like, can you latch on if they don't want Hield? Can you latch onto that? Could they take a flyer on Gary Trent Jr.? Just someone who's going to get you up threes in volume. And they have the expendable salary to do it. Just you're looking at Jonathan
so much. Sorry to jump in, but like it blows you over like how many like nice mid-tier type of salaries they can toss into deals.
Yeah, and you should be willing to move. Like even Fultz just feels like he's going to be a free agent. Is he really going to stay in Orlando when you have Black and Suggs and you just know that Wagner, Cole Anthony, and Banchero are going to do a lot of the ball handling anyway? What's also odd is they now all of a sudden Wendell Carter Jr., I know he's hurt all the time, might be expendable because of Goga Bitadze and Mo Wagner. That's someone who might get you more assets or could be viewed as a net positive in a deal. So, and just, this goes to your salary. Like they don't even have a contract that's tough to move right now just because of how loosely guaranteed Jonathan Isaac is. Technically the toughest contract to move is Cole Anthony just because he's poison built. That's the only reason.
But even that's not that bad.
You can easily move it under the new rules. So I don't even know who the most likely player to be traded is. I might just put it at like Chuma Okeke. Just maybe a team wants a flyer on him or they need a smaller matching salary. I'm just curious, one, if they do something, and two, what's the scale? We know it's not going to be on I would be shocked if they were a Murray team, but are they willing to go like the Rozier route? Or are they going to think even lower level? They could take just because he's a team option for next season. Luke Kennard helps his team out a bunch. Kevin Huerter seems like he's going through a rut in Sacramento, but he's eminently available. Can you do something there? There's a lot of different routes they go, and every single person that I just named would make me feel at least 3 times better about their ability to, one, make the playoffs and then do some damage once they get there.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned, maybe you did, because everybody makes sense there if you're a decent guard, like Malcolm Brogdon, even just as like a stopgap, especially if the Blazers want off of some money, just Fultz for Brogdon is really easy. I think Anthony Simons, if we're going to stick with the Blazers, is someone that like, why couldn't Orlando put a package together to do that?
That might be the best name. Fits their timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could send back expiring salary. You could give them, I mean, like Gary Harris and Markelle Fultz, done. I would you trade Anthony Black for Simons?
No.
I don't think I would either. But like, that's not ridiculous. Like you could at least start a conversation there too. So Orlando could.
Well, like, are you getting Matisse Thybulle back in that deal? Is there something? Are you getting Kumani Kamara? Is there other things that are exchanging hands there? But my guess would be no. That they're just they wouldn't do that.
It's a little early, I think. But like, just Wendell Carter is a really interesting piece too. It's kind of on the Murray theory of like maybe the market isn't like so full of options, and if Carter, I think we're just jumping to the idea that Carter is like speculatively available just because like Goga Bitadze, like, it was an injury, but then Goga kind of kept starting for a while and Carter suddenly seems like slightly less important, but his contract is still so good and he's still like a starting caliber center and he's young still, like sneaky young. So like, I don't know that you need to trade him, even if you do view him as a backup, because he's kind of paid like one. So, I mean, like, but if you want to, like New Orleans, doesn't Wendell Carter, if he's going to shoot threes, at all, it makes sense in New Orleans. He's a good defensive player. We all thought Orlando's defense was going to fall apart when he got hurt, and it didn't. Like,
he's also cheap enough to where some teams could, like the Knicks, technically. I know that Robinson's coming back this year. They have Hartenstein, but like they could just get him if they wanted to, and it's okay. We'll figure this out the rest later because Hartenstein could leave if he has to be our second big. That's how we'll treat him. And he's valuable because you mentioned, would you give up Black for so-and-so? Like throwing Wendell Carter Jr. to a team like the Blazers, he's young. His contract is great. It's like the Blazers, if Wendell Carter Jr. is a part of the Anthony Simons trade, that might be the asset that's coming in. And maybe it's a heavily protected, like that Denver pick or something, and you're adding protections to it. There's a lot of stuff they could do. If I had to bet, though, did you agree with, by the way, their most likely player to be traded? They have so many different ones. I would like to say that it's Fultz or Isaac because that means they're thinking bigger, but this lends itself to what I'm going to say now. I think it's more likely the move they make might be on the scale of, oh, this was the Alec Burks team. Like they got someone who could like give them those reserve filler minutes. Or Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones. Bogdan Bogdanovic would be
why
great
would
here.
you trade? Why would you trade for? This is going to be my Tyus Jones take across the board. Is like, why are you trading for him? I guess like unless you think he's the missing piece to your title run this year, when you can just sign him. You know, there's going to be a lot of teams that can sign him in the offseason.
Can't, right? But if you can't, you don't need to give a first round pick to get him. Then, and also if you want to spend your cap space, like I don't know, but
when you said Alec Burks, I got like viscerally disappointed because it's like, oh, he's right. That's all it's going to be, isn't it? It's not going to be Simons or Murray or anything like really exciting. I think you're probably right. My most likely player to be traded, I think, is probably, I would say Fultz. I think it should be Fultz.
I like it.
But I think that, do you get the sense that like he's like pretty well liked there and like as like a veteran? I mean, he's weird to call him a veteran, but
we don't know what his market's going to. They could still just bring him back. It's not like they've invested heavily in any other guard right now. Cole Anthony came cheap with his extension, but they need to focus on opening up the floor. And as skilled as he is on the ball, as much as he has developed his offensive skill set as a passer, as an in-between guy, he's not doing that.
No. I guess it's got to be him. But man, Orlando's in such. By the way, we didn't even really talk about their picks. They don't owe anybody a pick. Like that's true for how many teams in the league. They got a bunch coming in and none going out. That's
they have. What do they have? Denver's 2025. That's top 5 protected through 2027. By the way, is that their only extra? No, they have another first round pick in 2016 coming from Phoenix. That's a swap. So. They have one technically extra first round pick, it looks like, unless I'm misreading my own research. Hopefully I'm not. So, but like they have stuff that look, even some of their seconds might be interesting though. And they have all their own firsts as well too. And just that you mentioned already the sheer salary matching. This next team's, I guess, sort of fun just because they could sell a lot of people. The Washington Wizards are sellers. The degree to which they're sellers will be interesting, but they have just a bunch of players and they're firmly, before we get into most likely to be traded or whatever, they're firmly just in the extra first round picks, second draft guys, whoever they are as part of those deals. Yeah. And I do think they have at least interesting enough players on this roster to where maybe you can get someone interesting for Tyus Jones, or I think Kuzma is not being talked about nearly enough. That contract's declining and he's improved enough defensively to where do you worry about how he'll fit on offense as a third wheel? Maybe, but he did kind of play that already in LA and figured out a way to do it. He's a name I'd be looking at. I know Denny Avdija is poison pill, and I think he's probably playing too well for them to be like, let's move him. But that's just someone, almost any team. Like, do we need sort of combo forward defense or someone who can give us a little bit of ball handling or just a little bit of just these girthy drives, even though he's not super aggressive all the time still? The only untouchable player on this roster is Bilal Coulibaly, future MVP. Bilal Coulibaly. Is there like I will say, if I had to focus on a need, if you were targeting someone, and DeLon Wright, by the way, I don't like some of these guys DeLon Wright is maybe a buyout candidate. I'd be shocked if they move Jordan Poole midseason. I don't know who is that you would have to compensate.
I don't know how they would do that. Yeah.
I think that if they're going to target actual Daniel Gafford, I didn't even mention, like, there's players on this roster that are intriguing for other teams. If you're going to target something, and I know they kind of need everything, I do think it should be, is there a young primary ball handler type? Even if they're a distressed asset, we just take a flyer on, because that's what we're going to need moving forward. If, Tyus Jones isn't going to be here, they could obviously draft one, but they don't even have that necessarily as good as Tyus Jones has been this season. It ain't Jordan Poole. Like, you don't want Kyle Kuzma running your offense. And maybe Bilal gets there one day. We haven't seen that type of usage from him, but that would be the archetype of player I'd be targeting if you are actually looking to get players.
I don't even, like positionally, the position doesn't even matter to me. Like, this is such a ground floor of a rebuild that, like, it's almost like having the first pick in a draft. It's like, With most times, you're just like, who's the best? Who's got the highest upside? Okay, I want that. Like of whatever their options are, it's just got to be high upside. I think some of the names you listed as targets were really great. Like Pokuševski, why not? Like I don't know, like Killian Hayes, why not? Zaire Williams, all those make a ton of sense. Let me ask you this: between so I mean, we can zero in on the number one guy if you want to, but like I think exceptionally likely to be traded: Gafford, Jones, Kispert, Kuzma, DeLon Wright, like 5 guys, right? Of those 5, or of however many of those guys they trade, do you think they can get 2 firsts, like 2 good, like legitimate firsts out of all that? Because where's like maybe Kuzma's 1, maybe Jones is like a fake. I just like that's the cutoff. Is I don't know if they get to 2, and that's kind of the problem because that's what they should be targeting.
Yeah, you might need to step ladder your way there. Where it's, are you sending out Tyus Jones and Gafford in the same deals, or even a team that could do that? I think Kuzma. Could you attach Kuzma to maybe DeLon Wright or Tyus Jones? I know that becomes kind of, you're in the $30 million range now, like over 30, but there could be a team that could use both of those dudes, and that's how you get your 2 first-round picks. I do think just because he's expiring and he has no business returning after the season, Tyus Jones has to be the most likely to be traded.
I think that's right. And like, there are a number of teams, like you do hear that he wants to be a starter. So I think you would have to view him as a rental probably, because if you're trading for Tyus Jones, chances are you're a veteran, like you're a Minnesota type team. That's just like, we need a guy that's going to make sure the wheels don't fall off. You know, if when Mike Conley gets hurt,
where would he start though, aside from Washington right now?
San Antonio.
That's Trey Jones finally starting. Shout out San Antonio.
Not anymore. Your brother's coming in to take that spot. Hope you enjoyed it. Tough break. Yeah, well, I think they're kind of like, I was surprised when I was looking at the numbers. They're not on Orlando's level, but all those guys I mentioned, Gafford, Jones, Kispert, especially Kuzma and Wright, those are all like, you know, nothing. Who makes the most? Kuzma, 3 years, 64. Like, and at the very bottom end of that, you've got Kispert making 5.7. Like, come on. Like, between those 2 numbers, all those guys are movable. It's just, like I said, I'm concerned that the pick equity may not be there when you have like good players on decent salaries, but nobody that's like teams are clamoring to get.
Could you get a first for Johnny Davis? Maybe.
I mean, at one point he was worth a first because they used one on him.
You know, just before we move on, I was singing the praises of Kyle Kuzma, and it's so hard to find a good Kyle Kuzma team. I thought of Sacramento's a good one. I had the Grizzlies on there until their season just went in the absolute gutter with the jaw and now Marcus Smart injuries. Yeah. He could still be a good long-term fit, but I don't know why you give up value for him now. And then it's just, okay, could he work in Indiana if they want to pay less than like not go all in? Because you hear from the reporting on Indiana's, well, they don't want to give up X amount of firsts or Mathurin or Walker for Pascal Siakam. And it's kind of like, well, guess what? You don't get Pascal Siakam like that.
I was maybe it's just because I got Bobby Portis on the brain because I was watching the Bucks earlier tonight before we started recording.
What a terrible night of hoops. We should have recorded earlier. Those games suck.
Dan, was it though? Because you could check out of those games having gotten all the knowledge you needed from them pretty early. Like in both.
I did. I ended up editing. I said I wasn't going to post a YouTube short today. I was like, well, fuck this Boston Milwaukee game. I'm just going to edit it now. And that's what I did.
And OKC, I can't even remember who OKC was playing. They were just crushing them. So that one was done early too. In contrast to the games the night before, holy shit, there were some good games on, I guess it'd be Wednesday night now. We don't need to get off on that tangent probably. So that's one division wrapped. Good job by us, right?
Not really, because we said we were going to do average of 5 minutes a team, and we're already over that.
All right. Well, then let's pick it up. Let's do Central next, which puts us on the Chicago Bulls. Not a lot to say there, right?
Yeah, I mean, what are they doing? Yeah, they should be sellers, but there's a non-zero chance that they view themselves as buyers. If like Arturas is trying to keep his job, or maybe it's just a matter of where we're going to move Levine and we're going to target players kind of like Masai did when you move Anunoby and hope that continues to improve our trajectory. I don't have a feel for what we know what they should do. They should be sellers. DeMar's headed towards free agency. He's been super great in the clutch again. The Bulls have started winning close games again, but it's like you've capped your ceiling if you just continue down this path. And I get the whole don't trade Zach LaVine for the sake of trading Zach LaVine. I understand that, but it should be just open season here, because I do think between LaVine, DeRozan, and Caruso, you're probably looking at, if you traded all those guys, you end up with 4 first-round picks, right?
Four is a number. I think you get maybe 2 for, well, I don't know where they're all coming from, but Caruso's definitely 1. I think he should be 1. I don't know if it's like a high end one. I think DeRozan's worth 1, and then 2 for Levine probably, but like, I don't know, the indications on his market are so bleak that I don't know. But yeah, 4 is the number in my head. My only note on them, independent of your write-up, is just trade everyone. Like, I guess if you want to exclude Kobe
Not Kobe White. I'm sorry.
Kobe White has to be
kind of
excluded
tailed
now.
off
That's like a contractual obligation, which, like, he's on a good contract. If you're going to start rebuilding, like, sure, that makes sense to keep him around. Maybe he's your starter. I don't know. He might be that good on like a, more functional version of this team. But like, I mean, if they don't, I'm just not persuaded by there being no market for Levine. I think if it's the case that like the teams that are interested want you to take back salary that's like almost as bad and isn't offering 2 firsts, then like, I guess. But like, if you trade Levine, it's not just the assets you're getting back, it's also just he's not taking up your cap space anymore. So like, if you could just get that money off of there, you can't give him away. Like, there are some big contracts, like the Warriors might give Andrew Wiggins away right now. Like, if they could, like, just erase the money. The Wizards might give Jordan Poole.
You know what the trade is?
What's the trade?
Andrew Wiggins for Harrison Barnes.
Let's just turn back the clock. Let's go back to the original timeline.
I think Kings fans are desperate for any type of true wing. And because Mike Brown is there, I bet you Kings fans might be on. If you have Kings fans in here on YouTube or in our Discord or on Twitter and you're listening, would you do Andrew Wiggins for Harrison Barnes? You have the room underneath the tax, I think, to just do that. If you want to get off Davion Mitchell too, we could find another team for him as well. But like, that's totally not the Western Conference related pod. What is this? So I have a Levine trade, but I want to ask you, what's the Levine team aside from the Lakers? That's my question.
I just like, I don't know who it is besides the Lakers. Like, just the need, like, so you're okay. Who are the teams that need an expensive offense only shooting guard? Like,
or are dumb enough to think that's what they
dumb
need.
enough to think that they need that's the answer.
Troy Weaver coming in.
Oh, we're gonna get to the Pistons soon because we're in that division. But like, I'll save my Pistons thoughts. Do you have a team in mind? I don't feel like I have a great, like, I don't know who needs Zach LaVine that for the price that it's going to cost.
I do. Part of me still thinks that Toronto could work, but I don't like it anymore with Quickly there. I thought a little bit about Minnesota, just like a Karl Anthony Towns for Zach LaVine challenge trade, because they need the extra offensive creation. But I don't. They're so good defensively right now that you don't want to inject Zach LaVine into that culture.
I mean, we spent some time talking about how Miami needs shot creation and scoring in the backcourt. Like, that's not a Miami move, though, I don't think.
But do you want Hero and LaVine?
No, of course not.
I think LaVine is better than Hero. I know Zach Lowe necessarily doesn't, but like LaVine has had these caps lock seasons where he's a legitimate top 20. Hero's never touched that level.
No.
But do you want them on the same team? I also don't know. If you're the Heat, though, is it reasonable to say, well, do we want to pay $16 million more a year for Zach LaVine? Is LaVine $16 million better than Tyler Hero? I mean, in the playoffs, I don't know.
I don't know. I just said, like, how much better is Zach LaVine than Terry Rozier? ? So if we're talking about Hero in the same context, it's kind of a similar thing.
And so, I mean, there's Miami. It just feels like it should be the Lakers, which then kind of neutralizes one of your DeMar DeRozan destinations, because that's also another player we say will get a first from who? First of all, the Lakers, I think DeMar DeRozan is a terrible fit for the Lakers. Yeah, if you're worried about the non-LeBron minutes, but guess who's probably going to be on the floor when it matters most?
And guess what theory of building a Lakers roster has never worked? Oh, we got to like get an innings eater for when LeBron's not in the game. That's just, sorry. We can't keep thinking that that's like the solve for LA. That's not how it works.
I tried to find a trade with the Lakers that would make sense for both teams. And I don't think the Lakers give up Austin Reeves, which I think is a reasonable line to draw in the sand, even though there could be just some like functional overlap defensively between the two, or just like you don't want to play them together. Would you do if you're both these teams? Who says no? Rui, D'Lo, Jalen Hood-Schifino, first round swaps in 2026 and 2030, and then a top 3 protected pick in 2029 that you could also protect into 2030. It would then just delete that swap. So you're looking at 2 swaps, a 2029 first, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Rui, and D'Lo for Zach LaVine. The Lakers, in my opinion, should absolutely do it.
You don't think that's the pick equity is? Yeah, I know what. If anybody says no, it's. I guess it's. Yeah, I
It
think I
feels
do
like
that if I'm the Lakers. I think
it
I do
feels
it
like
if
a
I'm.
Beal to the Suns situation where it's a lot for the Lakers to give up because it's
Yeah,
all they have. But who are you getting that's better than Zach LaVine for that package?
yeah, I think that's probably right. I think that's right. And if you're the Bulls, I think well, you may just not have a choice. If you want to trade him, that's probably about as good as you're going to get. Because it's not really right to call it 3 firsts because it's like one and then I don't know what we consider swaps really, but I don't know like because we're just going in circles. Like, where's the team that's coming out with the like 3 legit firsts for Zach LaVine? Like, I don't. It's just not. I don't think it's happening. I don't think
Some
maybe.
people like Orlando. I wouldn't hate it because they have the timeline to where his money doesn't torpedo it, but I'm just and that would test their defensive resolve for sure. I just don't, if it's not going to cost you anything really in terms of pick equity, maybe, but I don't love that fit because I just question whether he would buy in. I also hate the Sacramento fit, by the way.
Oh,
I don't love that.
yeah,
Kudos to the Kings for being on his list. That shows a lot about Sacramento, but
yeah,
I don't like
yeah.
the fit.
Not on Siakam's list, but they got on Zach LaVine's list.
Final question on Chicago.
Okay.
Zach LaVine, the most likely player to be traded for sure, right?
Yes, I think so.
Let's go through these two really quickly. Will DeMar DeRozan be on this roster after the trade deadline?
I don't think so.
He
Expiring.
Not a lot of shooting, but he could maybe make some sense in Minnesota. Backup point guard minutes. I don't love it either. That's not. I don't love it.
I just think like any like Zach LaVine you may be stuck with, but like if you don't trade DeRozan,
He's leaving.
Or he's leaving. You're not like it would be, and that would be the least bad outcome is if he left. Like if you re-signed him for market rates and you're just like hopping back on the treadmill, that would be worse.
Alex Caruso, will he be on this team past the trade deadline?
Again, I don't think he should be. I think the Bulls should move him, but he's third on that list. I think he's more likely to still be there than DeRozan or LaVine.
Knowing that he's coming up on his next contract, would you trade Patrick Williams?
Yeah, I'd trade him. I think we don't. You feel like how much longer are we going to hang around with this?
You know what? There are two teams that interest me for him. If the Clippers called you right now and it was their 2029 pick for Patrick Williams, are you doing it? They have to include money, but it could be Amir Coffey or whoever it is to make the money work. Like
I'm taking a Clippers first 5 years from now for Patrick Williams. Absolutely. Although like Karnisovas is not going to be there in 5 years, most likely. So hard to say, but.
And then Utah just has all this pick equity. I know they could maybe structure their books so they could go after him restricted free agency, but if you could get, I don't know what the package is, but like that might be.
Is he like an interesting Indiana fit? If you think he can just be a 4 and really defend, like I don't feel like
he can be a 3-4, and I think you'd want someone with more offensive volume, but just like the defensive intensity that he could bring would be good for them.
He's kind of like the anti-Toppin. It's like they're the two sides of a coin or something. Like he's all defense, and you just don't know if he's going to ever like score with high efficiency. I don't know. That's an interesting one. All right, are we good on Cleveland? Yeah.
So there's the Donovan Mitchell rumors from Mark Stein where they're all coming from rival execs. So I just don't buy it as much. And they've played well enough through injuries, including when Donovan Mitchell's missed time, that I just feel like you see this season through. So I know you said we talk a lot about Mitchell. What is the team? I actually don't like him in New York still. I just Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell doesn't do it for me. Brooklyn was mentioned. What is the team that's coming in with an offer that would force you to consider after what you gave up for Donovan Mitchell to move him now? I don't think the offer is going to be materially different in the offseason. So I'm not even going to, they might play well enough in the postseason where he wants to stick around. I'm more focused for this team. Can we get another type of stretch big? I know they have George Niang and Dean Wade in there, but can we do that to really lean on these one big lineups? And then we'll address the Jared Allen, Evan Mobley dynamic over the offseason if you're going to look at moving Allen, or just another 3-and-D type wing, just because I don't know if Isaac Okoro is going to hold up offensively in the playoffs. That's to me, this team is buyers until or unless Donovan Mitchell asks for out. And so like, that's why I don't really feel like we need to spend time on Donovan Mitchell stuff. Am I wrong?
Well, it was more that just like, I'm kind of having like what do I think about this situation crisis with him? Because a lot of times, I feel like it's kind of hacked to just say like the Knicks are looming, or maybe it's Brooklyn, maybe it's Miami, but just this idea that he's a short timer in Cleveland is just like, it's too pervasive to just pretend that that's not a thing. And so that triggers in me the thought of like, well, okay, so if the Cavs don't move him now, he's basically an expiring contract next year. And then maybe his value diminishes, and you're kind of dealing with the same thing of, if you try to trade him at, say, the 2025 deadline, you've got who's trading for a Donovan Mitchell, the like 3-month rental or 4-month rental at that point, and what are you getting? So it's like, his value is diminishing right now on the assumption that Cleveland will not have him after 2025. So it's like, I'm starting to panic. I want to move him. But then at the same time, it's like, all the logic is just like, this kind of was like a bummer of a year already. Like, there's been too many injuries. Let's see what we can add to the team this offseason, and we really make a run next year and see how good this core can be. Maybe that convinces Mitchell to stay if he's already eyeing other places. But like, I can't kind of square those two ideas, because like, you want to be patient, but it's just happened too many times where you don't, like Toronto's done it time and again, where you just like don't act. You don't want to act early, but like, sometimes if you don't do that, your only alternative is like acting way too late, or not acting at all because you lost the ability to do that. See Fred VanVleet, at last off season. So like, what do you think about that kind of juxtaposition of sort of like team building ideas, right? Because there is a chance you just, you're getting less for Donovan Mitchell every day you wait to move him, and you're going to run into the possibility of losing him for nothing. So like,
you're
does
not
that spur you to action?
No, because you're not going to lose. It's franchise malpractice if you don't move him by next year's trade deadline, if he has not indicated he will stick. And you are so pot committed to him right now that suffering whatever the offer is now versus what it will be in July.
Yeah.
I'm going to see this through. And I'm not going to double down. And they can't really double. I mean, like, doubling down for them would we trade a 2030 pick swap? So like, I can't bring myself, not that I can't bring myself to care. If they are actually worried about him leaving, then yes, it's a conversation to have. I don't see the team right now that's going to come in and bowl them over with an offer. I do think Brooklyn and Miami might be the likely ones. Mm-hmm. Would a sneaky one be Houston?
I mean, I don't know. I'm concerned that like, they're never going to get bowled over. Like, that's an impossibility, because everyone's afraid that if I trade for this guy, I have to price in the fact that I might only get him until he decides to opt out and leave. Like that you know what I mean? Like,
if it's not, I guess, a team that's on his quote unquote list for sure. But like, you're going to get multiple first round picks if you adhere to his wish list, which will probably have 3 or 4 teams, even if it has one team, you will still get multiple firsts for him over the summer or at next year's trade deadline. Even.
I mean, like, it depends though, because if it's like Brooklyn, for example, Brooklyn's going to have cap space in 25, and they'll be thinking like, why am I trading anything to get him? I can just sign him, and he wants to be here.
Here's my thing. Now you're acting like Masai Ujiri is the lead basketball executive for the Cavaliers, and that these teams know, like, when do players of Donovan Mitchell's caliber leave in free agency anymore?
Yeah, right. Good point.
So I wouldn't move him. I would probably. Can you get they have some money to move around, actually buying out Ricky Rubio? They are very close to the luxury tax, so like inside $1 million or maybe more post Ricky Rubio buyout. They do have some mid-end contracts they could move. I'm curious as to what you think about this type of deal. One, who do you think is the most likely player to be traded on this team? Ooh. And do you view them? You didn't even choose. I have them as buyers. You have them as like trade.
Well, no, the Mitchell thing is the Mitchell thing's messing with me, as is like, what if we did just trade Jared Allen now and give Mobley the rest of the year to like figure out if he's a center or not by himself? But no, I think they're probably buyers. But like, so who's most likely to be traded if we're ruling out the like selling option of Allen? Like, I don't know. LeVert, Okoro maybe as an expiring that some team might want to have bird rights. Well, like, I don't know.
What I thought was interesting, and I think it depends on how you value this player. He is a better offensive spacer than Isaac Okoro. Would you move Okoro salary and maybe Golden State second this year for DeAndre Hunter?
I don't love Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't rebound, he doesn't pass, and Okoro's an underrated passer.
But he's a better defender too. Like, I mean, I think, no, I think.
But it's whose offense will hold up in the playoffs better.
Yeah, maybe you trust Hunter more. I think I wonder if you just talk to Brooklyn about like, what do we need to do for a Finney Smith or Royce O'Neal or something, one of those two guys maybe. I mean,
Would you give up so let's say what is the best second round pick that this team owns? Is it Golden State's 2024 second round pick? Probably.
I mean,
They have Milwaukee's in 2025 or Denver's in 2027.
None of those are any good. It is the Warriors pick. I think it's probably better.
So like if you included a 2030 swap to Brooklyn and that pick, does that get you Dorian Finney-Smith?
With Okoro? Is that who you're?
Well, I guess then maybe you don't need the second round pick I don't think Okoro alone is going to get you Dorian Finney-Smith. Okoro plus salary alone isn't going to.
I also don't know why Brooklyn wants Okoro. It would be the other thing. Although I just mentioned Brooklyn, I'm trying to get another big wing, I guess maybe since we're in the buy mode. And I just go to Brooklyn whenever I'm trying to do that. Is it Okoro for you? Who's most likely to be traded here?
I had Ricky Rubio at one point, and now it just kind of feels like Karis LeVert has the 1 year left on his deal. He becomes a human trade exception next season. So is that the guy? But they kind of need him for backup ball handling with all the injuries. They do have Craig Porter Jr. So it's like, is it Dean Wade? Just like sort of that minute, or is it Okoro because it's those mid-end salaries? And can you figure out a way to upgrade for straight up, does Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade, is that enough and that second round pick or a 2030? Does that get you Dorian Finney-Smith? Does that move you if you're the Cavaliers? Like Dorian Finney-Smith's a good shooter, but is he creating the space necessary in the Mobley, Jarrett Allen lineups that you're going to be playing at some point?
Doesn't LeVert also profile as like a nice, 1/3 the cost alternative to Levine? Like if you're, oh my God, we need someone who can score, maybe he can start. He could definitely be a 6-man. If the Lakers are just like, I can't deal with the Bulls anymore, calls up Cleveland and says like, I don't know, we'll give you Hachimura and Hood Schifino, give us Karis LeVert. We can talk about the picks or something. Like, well, I don't know. Like LeVert would help the Lakers. He's not a great shooter, but like he would help that offense. That's for sure. I'm just looking for a lower cost alternative to the stars. I think are not going to get traded potentially.
And so actually, the one player I actually really like for this team is Simone Fontecchio from Utah. Is going to be an early bird RFA this year. Like, let's get that motion shooter in here. Like combined with Max Strus and Sam Merrill, you really just open up the floor in whatever lineup you want. Yeah. He's got better size than a Sam Merrill. A Sam Merrill, excuse me. Since you compared Zach LaVine to Karis LeVert, I feel like it's time to move on to the Detroit Pistons.
I'm just going to keep looking for cheap non-Zach LaVine players. So the Pistons, okay. I just want to start with the idea that won't go away from multiple reports over months now of the Pistons are considering like adding veteran talent or being buyers or, you throw the name out there, Tobias Harris, Siakam, I think his name, like they've been at least linked in discussions or interested in. I just can't wrap my head around it. I can't understand how, like, other than like you're Troy Weaver and you're maybe getting fired and you want to finish with 17 wins instead of 12 or something like that. Like it's just like, there's no scenario where, unless what you're getting as a buyer is picks attached to bad money, because that's not really buying in the sense that, you typically think about it. You can't just be bringing in veteran talent. Like, you just can't do it. You can't be doing another Bogdanovich, another, that kind of thing. Like, I just can't get my head around that.
I would actually argue, I guess if you're worried about, will they continue to divvy up minutes poorly? I get that, but like the Bogdanovich and even Alec Burks acquisitions didn't cost them real equity. When you're talking about Tobias Harris, Siakam, they were linked to OG Anunoby. You cannot trade your young, like this is not, don't trade Jaden Ivey, don't trade Asar Thompson or Jalen Duren. Like these are not, or don't trade your own first round picks. And because you don't have any extra first round picks, those are the picks you got to trade if you want to get in on a Pascal Siakam. So I would target second draft guys or young players. And can we get value for Bogdanovich still? Can we get value for Alec Burks? I would say, though, I'm not opposed to if they just want more veterans that they think actually fits the roster. If it doesn't cost you anything and you're just combining James Wiseman and Joe Harris to get Gordon Hayward. This was my Gordon Hayward team.
Yeah.
And you want another sort of playmaking, connective type wing in there who's going to help you space the floor. I'm okay with that. It's
But
this
that's an
idea that
expiring salary above all, right? Like the Hayward, the
but they
future of Hayward. Who gives a shit how many more games he helps you win this year? Like the
well,
value in
they're not
Hayward
gonna
is
win
his
enough
money comes
anyway,
off the
which is
books.
why I'm fine with it. So if he helps streamline the development of just opening up room for
Sure.
Cade,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
he's been playing. Cade's been playing a lot better. The turnovers are down before his injury, anyway. But and also they have other expiring contracts, so you're sort of just folding those in to one. The smart move is probably to do nothing if you really are interested in buying, because Bogdanovich and Burks. I mean, you should probably get rid of Burks. I feel like he hijacks their offense a lot, and
Yeah.
also let's just weed out as many guards as possible that are going to play over some of the younger
Like
guys.
Burks is a little too good and like justifiably probably should play if you're trying to win games over some of the young guys, but like take the club out of it's like the old take the club out of Monty Williams' bag. Like don't let him have that option.
I do think the players that are mentioned that we think they should not be targeting because of the opportunity cost outside of free agency, because Detroit will be a cap space team this summer if they want to be. And so they can go after those guys then. They at least seem to have the archetype, downright of what they need, because you still do, presumably, you're invested in Jaden Ivey. Sar Thompson has a little bit of that secondary playmaking. You have Cade. So you don't necessarily need a floor general, but you need like these dynamic 3-4 types that will allow you to play some of these lineups where the spacing gets a little squishy, because when there's when everyone's healthy, there's just your best youngsters, if you're playing, which don't play together really, but your best youngsters include 2 to 3 non-shooters at this point.
Yeah.
So they at least do seem to have that. And I think people are like, well, why would you keep Bogdanovich? That's franchise malpractice. They can still move him over the offseason. So I'm more concerned about this team deciding to buy in the sense of, we move off our own first round pick or young player X that's not Killian Hayes or James Wiseman to get this player right now when it doesn't do anything for us, short term or long term.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to, I mean, it's an admittedly, it's not a simple situation, but I really feel like the Pistons cannot overthink this. Like it's just draft picks, flexibility, youth.
And they don't have extra, they need extra firsts. I just don't know. Does Bogdanovich get you a first? I even thought about a team like the Heat.
Well,
and it's like they were willing to protect the hell out of the first, but even we just went through this. If they give you Kyle Lowry for Bogdanovich and Burks or wherever, it's like Kyle Lowry matters to them right now. And so does Duncan Robinson. And so it's just, who's giving you a first for, the way to get that would be, Nets, you want to get off that Ben Simmons contract? Or Warriors, you want, we need a wing. Let's take some Andrew Wiggins. We'll throw Bogdanovich and you can have Burks, or we go that route. So and would they even give you a first in that scenario? The Warriors probably wouldn't. So
that's the thing. Like, I think to your point about, this year doesn't really matter, and it matters. You take that both ways. Like for Bogdanovich specifically, it doesn't really matter what the Pistons get back this year, but also like in defense of like maybe waiting until the offseason, like take a team like Memphis where Bogdanovich might help hypothetically. Like they're not trading for him this year. They're not going to give you a first this year. Maybe in the offseason when they're kind of retooling the roster, that makes sense. And you do throw them in as like, well, they weren't willing to give up a first in February. Maybe now they are in July. Like there may be a handful of teams like that. So like it's, I guess for me, I'm more concerned with the Pistons. Just, I don't know if they go try to get veteran talent just because they want to be better, like that's indefensible, like in the short term. But if it's bad money, like you said, like if it's Hayward and he also happens to facilitate for the youth, great. And at the same time, like you can't we got to get off Bogdanovich just because what's he doing here? Like you're not hurting your tank. You do ultimately probably because you want to get something for him, but it can be in the summer or next year.
Yeah. And or you could just let him walk if you want to use cap space. And I don't think, given what you paid to get him in the first place, we're talking about over his last 15 games, he's shooting 40 trillion% from 3 on like 7 attempts a game. Yeah, you don't want to leave that, and he can create for himself a little bit. So maybe he's just in his age 34 season, and so I'm just like,
well, that's
they're 1-14 with him balling out over those 15 games. So
that's another like. So we were just pinging back and forth because maybe his age does say you better move him now because like who knows what he's going to look like down the stretch of the season. Could just fall off and no one will want him. Unlikely, but like that's another concern. Let's move to what do we got? Indiana. That's next alphabetically. Good job by us.
Yeah, what do we talk about here other than what we talk about all the time with Indiana? Do you think I'll ask you this. In a vacuum, are they buyers or sellers? And does the Tyrese Halliburton injury change that in any way for you?
I think they can be. I think if they probably need to be a buyer, but like, and I know the Halliburton thing doesn't really change it for me because it's a grade one, right? So there, I think Jeff Stotts had something like the average is 13 days, 12 or 13 days with that. That like we've seen that the Pacers, except for the other night when TJ McConnell ran wild, like they tend to lose with Halliburton out, but 2 weeks ish is not crippling, I don't think. So I still think they should be a buyer, like within reason, because we were talking off air, because these are the riveting conversations we tend to have. Like they can be a cap space team if they want to. They don't need to just take on a bunch of salary. But to get right down to it, like this is my Siakam team. I think in terms of just fit and what I think makes sense of the mentioned destinations for Siakam, I think I like this one the best. It's not perfect, but this isn't a new take, but like, I think he makes sense there. You're at least addressing the power forward spot somehow. I think if you're Indiana and you're a buyer. So I have a couple other.
And you're getting some backup 5 minutes there as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. But like that's just upgrade the top end spot and make it so Neesmith doesn't have to play so much for, that kind of thing. So if you're buying, that's what you're looking at. I have a couple other names I like other than Siakam, but like, I guess maybe are they your Siakam team if you have one? If he's got
now, I've come around on it. I thought they need to skew more towards someone who can slide down to the 3. But like the emergence of Aaron Neesmith, like I think you would probably still prefer it, which is why I like the idea of, especially if they don't want to give. And let's put the ball in the Siakam discussion. This is what I honestly believe, unless he has told Toronto he is leaving, that like, why would you move him for pennies on the dollar? If you're Indiana, are you willing to? And I think what's problematic is that their salary matching tools, when you look at Bruce Brown and Buddy Hield, matter to their team. And so I understand that element of it. Do you need a third team who would give you value for those guys? Or maybe does Toronto view Buddy Hield as an actual asset? But like in not an ideal world, but I actually think if you proposed, like if Toronto was willing to do this, and I don't think they would be, to be clear, where they're getting 1 first-round pick, Jalen Smith, Buddy Hield, and Jarris Walker, I don't think Indiana would do that. And I think it's going to take more than that in my mind to get Siakam, where if I'm Indy and I believe he's re-signing, you only do all these deals with soon-to-be free agents. Don't trade for them if you don't think they're going to, like, that simple as that. I would go 2 first-round picks, the second of which, like this season's first-round pick in 2026, protected, and Jarris Walker for Siakam. Now, the problem is you are giving up Buddy Hield, who matters, or Bruce Brown, who would also matter. Mm-hmm. And like Jalen Smith is playing for them too. So can you substitute Obi Toppin in there? But Obi Toppin plays a little bit more than Jalen Smith, depending on the week. So, and depending on the week, he's also shooting better than Jalen Smith from 3. It feels like it's unnecessarily complicated to get Siakam to Indiana. And so I think what's best for the Pacers is, because they're just historically conservative anyway, you look at the alternatives, which I have as Matisse Thybulle. Jeremy Grant could be good here. Kyle Kuzma, I don't love it. Like that's another name that you could look at, though. I did think about if everyone in Golden State really is touchable, aside from Steph. Touchable. That's the
very touchable.
Aside from Steph, Pacers fans gave me shit when I think I mentioned this in offhandedly to you, like as a joke. I don't hate Draymond Green in Indiana.
I mean, you got a spacing 5. You got a dynamic on-ball lead guard. I mean, there's worse fits. Like, unless you just don't like Draymond Green, and I can't imagine why anyone would feel that way. Like, what's not to like about that fit?
Money, about 3 years and $75 million left on his deal. But I'm just like, so the alternative is giving up equity for Siakam and then giving him the 4-year or 5-year max, or close to it.
A couple of Siakam alternatives I kind of like, where he's like, and again, maybe I'm a little too interested in flipping Mathurin for someone that is going to help you defensively.
He's been playing really well lately, though.
I know. But I just think with Halliburton, you can get a total replacement value shooting guard and it'll be fine. Like if I'm balancing the roster out, like I'm calling Houston and I'm interested in like, maybe it's not Mathurin necessarily, but it's like Tari Eason, Jayshawn Tate, like, let's have a conversation about both of those and see Tate
perfect Pacers to where when like, it might cost them Andrew Nembhard, which might, stomach that. Like, but I don't actually, I love Tari Eason there. I just can't picture Houston moving.
Well, that's the thing is I mean, ultimately,
what about Patrick Williams if the Bulls are actually like
That's a
married to
great
this.
one. Yeah, I think that that's I mean, who's ever said great one when someone mentioned Patrick Williams as a fit? We just broke new ground, I think. But I meant it. Like, yeah, no, that's if you're looking at like how do we upgrade a position of need? I mean, I don't know that Williams look, like Williams is like kind of fallen out of favor and no one's sure what he is for a reason, but like if the alternative is you give up a bunch for Siakam, who you pay a bunch to keep, like maybe Patrick Williams is worth the upside flyer. I don't know. Like there are a lot of, that's all to say, there are a lot of lower cost like alternatives for the Pacers. Even though if Siakam's getting traded and you can like this is the roster fit, it makes sense to me, especially if you compare it to some of the other teams that are interested in Siakam.
This doesn't necessarily fit the bill, but what if because the Pacers just kind of have the guards in excess, and I'm not talking about giving up Mathurin or Halliburton here. If you could get Kyle Anderson from Minnesota,
That's
he's
fun.
expired. Like this, it feels like this is how it all ends for Indiana. Is they're going to trade for Najee Marshall or someone who'd be a good fit,
Yeah.
but it's just not someone who's going to move the needle in that regard. I do feel like the perfect middle ground of all the names we mentioned. I don't know if you have other ones. Just feels like Matisse Thybulle because he's been shooting well enough for most of this season. But I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, I feel like he would be just another guy that is playing up a position in Indiana, probably, like because he's not a 4. Like I get, so you're playing, and if you're playing him with Neesmith. Oh, by the way, I trust Neesmith now. Like I just when he's on the floor, like
I just one of the best value contracts in the league.
I just feel great about him. He plays so hard. This is our hard hitting analysis portion.
That's why you can go towards a more of a 4 because like, oh, we have Neesmith right here. There's our 3.
And like in a pinch, Neesmith can just be like enough of a chaos generator to like give you 5 minutes at the 4 if you need it. So I mean, you don't want to live that way, but I think
here's one. This is just perfectly low level. TJ McConnell for Nas Little and Yuta Watanabe.
Oh, I think the Pacers would prefer McConnell. I think he matters so much to their side, especially if Halliburton's out. Like, I think 2
weeks, but it's just sort of like, what are we doing here? Like they all have their between him and Nembhard and Mathurin and Halliburton and Bruce Brown's. Like you need to get some properly sized perimeter people in here.
Part of the issue for me is McConnell is a Gabe Vincent all-star for me, which is every time I watch, he has a great game. And I never see his bad games.
How many games Gabe Vincent had this year for you?
No, I haven't watched a lot of Gabe Vincent. So as far as I know, I assume he's been great.
What's the next team on the docket?
Let's see. We did Indiana. That leaves Milwaukee. This is our last team in the Central Division. Buyers or sellers, Dan?
They need point of attack defense, and it's just or anyone who cares about getting back in transition. I will say I'm just so done with the Malik Beasley slander here, who's shooting the hell out of the ball, and he's handling defensive assignments like that he shouldn't be. And he's not faring well in a lot of them. I actually think he's done a better job against switching on to bigger players. But like this is just Malik Beasley. You got him for and people are harping on, they promised him to start, and now that's going to impact if they wanted to trade for someone. No, it's Malik Beasley at the end of the day. You could break that promise. They already did break that promise.
On the minimum. Right. Like we're complaining about this guy as the problem. He's on the minimum. He's been one of the best offseason signings. Like we got to move on. He's doing everything Malik Beasley's supposed to do for the minimum.
I've had people in my DMs after I tweeted stuff about it. And it's just, I'm not a fan of, I mentioned this in the podcast you weren't on. I don't know why people feel the need to actually something that's not like debatable, where it's
have you been on social media before? You're familiar with social media, right?
I'm not a fan of people who like to tout their knowledge or that they might have sources, even though that they're probably a mouthpiece for the team that they're speaking on behalf of, and they just don't realize it. That's just, I'm over those in my DMs. And if you DM'd me this week, I'm not talking about you. So there you go. That like anyone, I've got a bunch of DMs this week, so we're fine there, or in the last week and a half, whatever it is. But they don't really have stuff to move.
This is a short topic. The Bucks don't have flexibility.
I do think that they probably have enough to get like a Javon Carter back, who they probably never should let leave, to be honest. Javon Carter, would the Bulls be willing to trade Ayo Dosunmu? I think he's trade eligible January 15th. Chris Dunn, he's been kind of like ever since they pulled THT out of the lineup in Utah, he's had some good moments for them. Dennis Smith Jr. would be another one. Like that's the level of stuff you're looking at. And then you have to ask, well, can we get by playing them next to Dame? And that's where you get into some weird stuff. I will say, if you're not invested in developing, in Jackson, we've seen him get minutes. Livingston hasn't gotten enough. Marjon Beauchamp has been all over the place. Do you think Beauchamp in salary, and maybe like what seconds do they have? Like, can that get you in the Dorian Finney-Smith discussion? Does it get you Royce O'Neal?
Maybe O'Neal. I just don't know what Beauchamp's value is anymore. I feel like in the past we've talked about him as like, oh, he's the sweetener you'd throw in, or maybe a team, he just hasn't been consistent enough this year for.
They do have Portland's 2024 second round pick. So if it was Beauchamp and that pick, and let's say Connaughton or even Portis for Thibault, is that enough or no?
I mean,
by the way, I will say, anyone, you're free to call me an asshole. Anyone who thinks that offer was stupid. Bucks fans, I'm not trying to be like condescending here. You don't have enough to get Alex Caruso. It's just, I'm sorry, it's not happening.
If they figured it out a way, I mean, that would be something. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I think I hadn't thought of like the Dennis Smiths of the world or the Chris Dunns, but I don't know if you read the Eric Name and Seth Partnow, just kind of discuss like what the hell is wrong with this defense. And it's a complex article with a lot of interesting stats.
Dirty jerseys. And it's on the equipment manager, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, aside from the jerseys not being, fresh and clean, it's just like the blow by drives are like through the roof, and it's just point of attack defense. Like if you could fix one thing, like Brook Lopez is fine. Giannis is maybe not in the optimal position tactically with Adrian Griffin now defensively. That's an issue, but it's just like they're getting cooked on the perimeter. And so Dennis Smith Jr. would make that happen less. And obviously Javon Carter would, obviously Alex Caruso would, obviously Chris Dunn would, but like you're only really realistically having any kind of shot at like the Dunn and Dennis Smith Jr. level of guys. So, I mean, like, if they do anything, I think this is probably just a buyout team ultimately, even though they may be limited in their options.
Well, they will be limited. It's just who's the guy that's getting bought out that's going to come in and fix their
nobody. That's the thing. There is not a fix. Like it's going to have to be internal. They'll just have to figure it out. But like Dennis Jr. or Dunn is about as good as you can do.
I'm just going to double check this to make sure they have it. But like the Portland 2024 second round pick is going to be in the low 30s. And so if you're just attaching that to Pat Connaughton, like, isn't that that's certainly enough to get you Javon Carter, right?
You would hope so. I mean, that's more than, it might be better than like some protected first that you're not even sure when you're going to get it, as an acquiring team. You're getting the 32nd pick or whatever with this one.
So like that might be, DFS is probably, you're right. That's like a stretch. And I'm not giving that up for a Dunn or a Dennis Smith. If they have to give that up for a Dunn or a Dennis Smith Jr., wow. But maybe even Portland's, like, that's got to be I think I would do Beauchamp and that pick and salary, especially if it's Bobby Portis. He's not had the best season. And I know he's kind of important to the team, but I wouldn't flinch at trading Bobby Portis. I'll approximate that backup big spot with someone else in the buyout market.
For Thibault in your Thibault package.
This is like, I kind of like this as a Thibault team. Am I crazy?
No, I think the only issue with him is like, I don't know, maybe you have a different impression.
Everyone shoots better from three in Portland. I hear you.
No, it's not that. It's like, I don't know that he's like the on-ball point of attack defender. He's kind of like, he swoops around and surprises you with blocks and like jumps passing lanes type of thing. Like I'm not saying he wouldn't be an upgrade. Like he would absolutely help them in transition too, like where they have so many problems. But like, I think you do that trade, but I'm just saying like, he's not I'm going to go guard the ball handler and he's not getting by me. He's not really that kind of defender by reputation, but I mean, he would be an upgrade on basically everybody that they've tried to use in that role. So
I was just trying to think of someone with more size than a Javon Carter, or even like, I would assume who might actually be the guy. I don't know if Chicago wants to move him, but that would be really, really interesting. I don't know that I wouldn't give up Beauchamp and the Portland pick. I'd give up the Portland pick for him though.
Yeah, I think way more. I think
who's the most likely player to be traded on this team?
I mean, I guess it's there's so many bad options. I guess it's Beauchamp, right? I guess. I don't know. I
was gonna say Connaughton just because you have to match salary somehow.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to think like Connaughton actually kind of matters for them.
But like when Jay Crowder's healthy and Malik Beasley is there, does he like as much?
Matters less. Yeah. I certainly compared to Beauchamp, you're getting more for Connaughton because Connaughton's like a rotation guy on a good team. Like they've just been that for a long time.
I'm probably more intrigued by Beauchamp though. For the teams that are going to be selling, I'd be more intrigued by Beauchamp than Connaughton.
Right. If you're trying to get your seventh guy hammered down, like this would never happen, but like you're the Celtics and you're trying to Because there's someone that's like, maybe a little better than Peyton Pritchard, but like not as good as Sam Hauser. Like maybe that's your Connaughton team. Whereas like if you offered Beauchamp to Boston, they'd be like, we're not like, he can't play for us like that, so that kind of, I guess that settles to your point that Connaughton probably is the guy to move. Good job on the Central. We did the Central Division.
And we are on to the Atlantic with Brooklyn, correct?
Boston.
Boston. Oh my God. I
got you on that alphabet. I was just talking about them. They need like their 8th or 9th best player. That's about it. You're not going to mess with anything else, right? Like this, I don't know. Although O'Shea Brissett's looking good. O'Shea Brissett's played better the last couple of games that I've seen. So maybe they don't need anything. I don't know. I don't too short of a discussion.
I know people think that they need a big, and they do have. Look, if they were willing to pay, they have the $6.2 million trade exception from the Grant Williams sign-in trade.
Yeah,
that like I don't know who is just going to give away a player for that, but if you're looking for a different type of guard or a big, I like Javon Carter for this team, Najee Marshall for this team, maybe even an Aaron Wiggins type, like kind of a shot of adrenaline that'll give you some rim pressure. I don't know what it costs to get him from OKC specifically. Those are the types of needle like nudging moves that like very marginal. I can't just I saw a report that they're interested in Kelly Olynyk or Chris Boucher, and I'm just like, what's the matching salary? They can't sign these guys if they were bought out. Because actually Kelly Olynyk might be right on the line. What's he making this year? And he's too good to buy out. If like he could be a buyout candidate if Utah's trying to do him a solid, but so what are you like? You don't have salary matching. He's at $12.2 million, so they could sign him.
But I think the names are like the salaries we have to figure it out. But like someone like Otto Porter, Nas Little, Sadiq Bey, Jalen McDaniels, like that type of player is if you're looking for on a championship team who's Pat
Connaughton.
Pat Connaughton.
Are the Bucks going to help you even further after getting making sure Drew Holiday got there?
I don't think those two teams are going to collaborate on a trade. But like I'm just thinking of the big wing that Brad Stevens has expressly said they need as like it's the only thing they really don't have in a third one. Obviously, you have two great ones. But like someone that could be the 8th or 9th best player on Boston and that you could foresee, like actually see playing 7 minutes in a playoff game. Porter, Little, Bay, McDaniel, like something like that.
You know what could be interesting? I don't know if Boston would do it because it would cost a shit ton. But if you're willing to take Kyra Lewis into that traded player exception to get New Orleans out of the luxury tax, and they were then going to send you Najee Marshall, who's basically making the minimum, so you don't really need to worry about that. I might consider that. I know that's very expensive for Najee Marshall, but he had some really good moments this season. And if I don't know if New Orleans is going to keep him in free agency, they got luxury tax concerns themselves.
Yeah, no, I think Boston should absolutely do that. Like,
not our money.
You're trying to win it now, right now. You just need like one more guy, maybe. And Marshall is like more than good enough to be that again, like the 7 minutes, not even every game in a playoff series, like twice. You need him out there, like
and he'll play him some 5, like just in a pinch, just to try and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I mean this is the best team in the league to me, and they just like. They don't need to do anything. And if they do something, it's going to be just the absolute back end of the rotation who might not even play if you shrink it in the postseason.
We are now on to Brooklyn. This is interesting. We know the Celtics are buyers. What are the Nets?
They got to be sellers, don't they? I mean, I think that's the only way to go.
I mean, the way that their picks are set up, though, it's just sort of, if they were going to be sellers, then it's right time to gauge the market on Mikal Bridges, who I just don't buy into this regression talk from him. It just happens that teams have a sample size on him in this role. And like, he probably needs to be the number 2 rather than the number 1. And that's not really a problem. Mm-hmm. I would still give up everything for Mikal Bridges. I don't care. Like, I'm looking at teams. If I was Houston, if I was OKC, if I'm the Knicks, I would throw the kitchen sink just at Mikal Bridges. But I don't I guess you do look at moving Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal. To what end? Maybe Nick Claxton. He's also going to be a free agent. Spencer Dinwiddie. To what end, though?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's tough because they owe that 2024 first to Houston. It's unprotected. So let's strip the whole thing for parts and try to lose as many games as we can. Like, even though some teams have such a head start, like that's not going to get you anything. So I still think, I mean, I want to keep Bridges. I think if you're a seller, you got to draw the line somewhere. This isn't like, even though trading Bridges, if you could get all those first and just make it so you're operating like a normal NBA team that has first.
What if Houston gave you back all your firsts? And because how many? Well, let's see how many. I constantly forget how many.
I can't keep it straight either. But
So
while you're looking that up, I think it's like clearly you try to trade Finney-Smith, clearly O'Neal, Dinwiddie, sure. I mean, maybe Dinwiddie again. We're looking for the low cost alternatives. Like, I don't know, does Dinwiddie help Orlando as a rental? Like, if you're talking about Brogdon going there, I mean, Dinwiddie hasn't shot it well, but like, there are places that need point guards, and send them to, I don't know. Go ahead. You have something you want to say? I can see the
I'm
smirk.
just laughing at I'm forgetting just how many picks they have owed to Houston. So I'm looking only the first one. So they owe this year's and 2026, and then they have swap rights owed in 25 and 27. And so if Houston said, "Hey, we have the expendable," I think they have the expendable salaries that they can step ladder their way to get there, where it's not, "Oh, we need to give you Dylan Brooks or Jabari Smith Jr. or somebody." If they said, "Here's Tari Eason, all of your own picks back."
So 2 firsts, unprotected, and 2 swaps.
And Tari Eason for Mikal Bridges.
I said, let me get Jalen Green too.
Honestly, he's been playing better. Would you do that if you're Houston?
I get Bridges. I can't. That seems like so much. You said Eason also. Eason's in this trade.
Well, I wasn't. You were including Jalen Green. I wasn't.
I just thought I was just trying to slip that in there. I mean, I think. Well, is that too much for Bridges though? It might not.
No, that's the thing. It's the Rockets need to believe that they're ready. I think the issue they would run into it. Well, I mean, we're going to be talking about like an 8-for-1 trade at that point, because like you're not trading Brooks, I would assume. I mean, I guess you would if it meant getting Mikal Bridges, but Van Vliet and Brooks, and then after that, your third highest paid player this season is the $9.9 million Jalen Green. So you do have Oladipo's expiring salary at 9.5 plus Jock Landale at 8. So you're already, and you got plenty of room under the luxury tax right now. So, I mean, like you could get there with 3 players. So Eason, those 2 players, and those picks. Who says no?
That's a pretty good one. I think maybe.
And if Brooklyn says no,
does Brooklyn say
would you
no?
consider including another first or Jalen Green?
This is just, we've exploded this trade. Let's see. So if I'm Brooklyn in this scenario, I got all my picks back. I got Jalen Green now, which actually, like, on a team full of guys that don't really know how to create offense, like, Jalen Green's a nice flyer in there.
I got we kind of saw that version of him over the first couple years in Houston.
It's a pure upside play. It's a hope that like he figures it out and justifies the draft pedigree. I feel pretty good if I'm Brooklyn there. And then if I'm Houston, I think we've cracked it. They both say yes. Good job. Take a lap.
So wait, what did we settle on? Jalen Green, 2 firsts, 2
Green,
swaps.
Houston, 2 firsts and 2 swaps for and you had to have Landale or somebody else in there.
If Brooklyn said you can keep Eason if you throw us another first, would you do that?
I really like Tari Eason. And those
it's just so you have Bridges, Brooks, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Fred Van Vliet. Şengün. Are you starting to run out? Jayshawn Tate is still there. You're starting to run out of minutes on the
those firsts aren't going to be any good. So I'm taking Jalen Green. I think the Rockets firsts are not going to be good after a while with that lineup.
So you would rather, if you're Brooklyn, you prefer Tari Eason over the other pick?
I think so. I really like Tari Eason. So
I like Tari Eason too. I'm just saying he's not a star cornerstone, and there's could be anything element to the draft pick.
That's true. I would just be banking on the fact that Houston's going to be picking in the 20s, unless you go way out.
So call it in that Houston one. However, if you're going to keep Mikal Bridges, should there be a consideration of should this be a DeJounte Murray team?
That's interesting. Then you're just pivoting into buy. You could certainly provide salary.
Were you waiting for, does Donovan Mitchell make sense for this team if you're keeping Bridges? I guess he does.
Oh yeah, because that puts Bridges in his proper offensive spot. Because
then I think what you're doing is you're trying to trade. How do we get extra first in here? And so that involves what can we get for Claxton, DFS, Royce O'Neal specifically.
Yeah, if you're trying to 2-step it to Mitchell eventually, you need to recoup some firsts. And I think Claxton should get you a first, although the next team is going to have to pay him. But
if I was OKC, I'd give him a first.
For sure. He's not like as bulky as you might want in an ideal situation.
He'll rebound. He'll protect the rim, though. Yeah.
It works fine because Chet. I had a revelation. Chet's a guard. Chet is a guard that is 7 feet tall. That is a potential defensive player of the year. But also he's a guard. So like that's a fine fit if Claxton doesn't space for you. You can more than survive offensively if that's your 4 or 5. And defensively, like forget about it. That's ridiculous. But yeah, so you try to find some firsts, and then that clears the decks a little bit, and you build around Mitchell and Bridges eventually. Like I mean, I don't hate it.
What is interesting though is that the Cavs might want DFS in a Mitchell deal this summer, so you probably have to be cognizant of that. And that leads me to my final question on the Nets: who's the most likely player to be traded?
Finney Smith, just because I think he's kind of the most universal fit type guy, and I think
yeah, this team is kind of the mother of all hedges too. We said they could basically buy or sell, or at least plan for the buy. Yeah. We are on to
your New York Knicks.
My New York Knicks. I'll take claim to them. They're playing well enough. That's fine with me. They're buyers, but I'm just wondering, Mitchell Robinson's probably coming back this year. Isaiah Hartenstein looks like they have early bird rights on him. It's like you think around 15 million or whatever is going to be enough to keep him playing well enough where did you know he's only 25?
he's going to get 2 more good NBA contracts before it's all done.
So, but non-star centers, the market's always fickle. It's just, we know what they need. There's another ball handler, even with Dante DiVincenzo getting those threes up, even with having Deuce McBride filling in fairly well. I think that's something you probably still look at because you want that third guy aside from Randall, especially given how Randall has fared in the playoffs, and Brunson, who can just get you the from scratch bucket. But it comes to the question of the star that fits or makes sense for this team still isn't available, at least as far as we know. Yeah. Although I would love Mikal Bridges here. Like should we talk another kitchen sink trade there? Where it's just like you're throwing the picks and Evan Fournier for Mikal Bridges.
I don't think you're allowed to have Anunoby and Bridges on the same team. I think there's a rule.
I would honestly, I'd probably orgasm if that trade happened. If you have OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges on the same team. So do you think I think a lot of people are like, well, DeJounte Murray's been mentioned. Terry Rozier has been mentioned. Malcolm Brogdon has been mentioned. I like the idea of rolling Evan Fournier's contract into someone who's on the books for next year, who's more functional for your team, and then could still be flipped as part of salary matching. It's about carrying that salary over. You could do that with Evan Fournier's team option, but that's not him at 17, 18 million. It's not moving anybody. It's just an expiring contract. Yep. What else does it cost to get these guys is where it gets awkward. And do you want to expend any first round equity? And even look, in the case of Terry Rozier, it's like we're giving up Evan Fournier and Quentin Grimes if we're the Knicks, and other salary to match, or I don't even know if they need to match. I haven't even plugged this in, but maybe they don't need to match. But like to get Terry Rozier and to play one of your, like 1 or 2 of your better trade chips left, that just feels a little awkward. And so I don't know that the perfect acquisition within reason exists. And so it wouldn't shock me if, like, obviously saying OG Anunoby is going to be their biggest move isn't spicy, but it just wouldn't shock me if they don't really do anything.
It wouldn't shock me either, because they've been really, commendably careful about keeping the powder dry, like even getting Anunoby without, giving up the pick haul.
They do have $10.5 million under the hard cap. Yeah. So like that's room that they could work with.
I just think, like you said it, like that, another ball handler, whatever, like a, shot creator, like, can you get to Bogdan Bogdanovic or like a Brogdon or, I'm trying to think, Jordan Clarkson, like, can you get to those guys using, Fournier and one of your shitty incoming first round picks? Like, you probably need more than that for, someone like Clarkson maybe, but like you can really offer legit salary relief, and you can, the acquiring team can say, we got a first, because, even though there's an asterisk next to some of the ones I think the Knicks should be willing to trade, there's definitely ways to go get that ball handler. It's just a question of, like, can you do it without, throwing McBride or throwing Grimes or whatever in there?
I think the problem with that logic, because both of us have it, is, well, if you go and get that ball handler, Grimes' minutes are going in the toilet anyway.
Right.
And so you just
use him, so you maybe give an even worse pick because Grimes is more desirable.
In a vacuum, I think for the mode of operations the Knicks are trying to follow, DeJounte Murray makes the most sense off the court as an asset play.
But we don't like him on the court.
I actually don't hate him on the court, but if it's now it's going to infringe upon your 3-point volume. And Dante DiVincenzo is taking mega difficult threes in high volume right now.
Yeah.
And just like, and then you have Josh Hart as well. So unless you're planning on playing really small at points with Julius at the 5, which this season, okay, maybe because of the Mitchell Robinson injury. That's where the DeJounte Murray thing. But if the cost is low enough where it's Grimes and salary and like a second or one of your, like if it's just Grimes, one of your crummy firsts and Evan Fournier for DeJounte Murray, like if it's the Mavericks pick Grimes and Fournier, like, do you turn that down just because you're worried about infringing upon?
The Hawks turn that down.
They probably should, but would they?
I don't know. Get real quick. We got to move on, but like, I don't know if we've talked specifically about this. The Murray fit with New York. We've talked offline about how it's like, the issues with it. Tell me what you think about this. Like, I know that the reason you traded quickly was principally because OG Anunoby is really good and we would like to have him. So that's the cost of doing business. But is it also fair to say that a factor was we're not in love with the Quickly Brunson pairing, particularly if we are paying Quickly his next deal of $25 to $30 million a year? Like, that's a factor, right? It was kind of like they sent that issue to Toronto, who's probably more willing to pay that money and is a better spot for him. Ditto for Anunoby going back, because it's like just makes more sense for the acquiring team to pay the guy. So like part of it was the Quickly Brunson fit for what it was going to cost, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think just also they decided paying OG Anunoby. They could also decide we'd rather pay DeJounte and OG Anunoby, let's say $60 million combined, than pay 50 something for RJ and Quickly.
I think that's right. But it's still like you just make the Quickly to Murray comparison, and they're kind of really, really similar. We have talked about this, where Quickly's a more efficient scorer. He's 3 years younger. He's probably going to make comparable money. And if you didn't love that fit, I get it. Like Anunoby is the variable, right? Like it's not Quickly or Murray. It's like Anunoby is there now because Quickly's gone. So it changes it. It's not a 1-to-1. But if you didn't love the Quickly Brunson fit, why do you love the Murray Brunson fit? Because
Murray has been, you can't bank on this, but Murray has been one of the most efficient pull-up three-point shooters in the league this year.
I'm not banking on that. I think the way you get there for me, and I'm not saying this would be my logic, but if I'm trying to like argue against myself on it, it's that I'm the Knicks now. I think Murray has the capacity to get back to like an all defensive level that he hit like 5 years ago or something like that.
If he's on a team with, and maybe not all defense, but if he's on a team with OG Anunoby and Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, and then these like Dante DiVincenzo's a complimentary player, and even Hartenstein, the stuff they can run through him, like you don't need to do as much on offense.
Right.
And he also gives you someone, we've seen some of their like 1-star minutes have been weird at points. He's done well for the most part in the 1-star minutes with Atlanta this season. So I think there's more of a fit risk, but I do think there's a higher upside than saying, well, we'll just take Brogdon or Terry Rozier.
Oh yeah.
Opportunity cost is the biggest one. As you mentioned, if the Hawks don't want, like if it's 2 firsts or if it's Grimes and a first, and you might as well just capitalize on the opportunity. Or even if it's Grimes and the Detroit and Washington picks, it's just kind of like, are those going anywhere? Or maybe one of those in the Dallas pick, because that doesn't look like it's going to be very good this year. I'm more inclined to think about the swing than I think a lot of Knicks fans are. And knowing that there are probably a lot of Knicks fans who watch the team more than I have, that's fair. I don't view Murray as necessarily this ball stopper who's impossible to fit in.
I think last thing is we, or at least I started this out talking about how like it might cost way more than you think to get Murray because he might be the best player available and several teams will be like bidding up for him. That's a reason for the Knicks not to get involved, because they got to keep the powder dry.
I will say though, the final thing here for real is this could be more about, okay, it's awkward this season, but like we don't want to deal with Julius Randle's next deal. And so we're going to look at moving him, as good and important as he's been to us. And so we want to make sure we still have at least that second creator, or someone who could be used as part of the star trade. So I'm more aboard the Murray train if the price is lower than you expect, which is kind of a stupid thing to say, but we're talking about Murray maybe netting the most first of any player available. And if he's not at that level, if the Hawks are just that like all over the place, I'd be in on it if I was the Knicks. Our next team, the Philadelphia 76ers, they are clearly buyers. Joel Embiid's dealing with left knee problems, going hard after that second MVP award for some reason was pretty stupid, and it seems pretty stupid now. He's currently on pace to play in fewer games than he needs to. I do think, is there more urgent. Oh, really quickly, who's the most likely player to be traded on the Knicks? Is it just Fournier? Because if they make a deal, he's their only expendable salary matching fodder at this
18
point, right?
million expiring, or I mean, like team. What is it? It's a team option, right? For the
Yeah.
last year of it, so expiring. So I think it's got to be him because that's the way you can improve the team with that money and like a pick that a pick you can spare. I think that's got to be the one.
With Philly, I know a lot of people have said they're going to have more that they're not going to have dual max space. Everybody shut up about that, please. They're going to have more than max space this summer, but they can get to like a $20 million player or so and then still carve out max space while holding on to Maxi's cap hold about. And I think this is why I'm hijacking the discussion at the beginning rather than throwing it to
No,
you.
this is because I was going to be the one that's like, well, but what about the cap space? And do they want to take on?
Here's my whole thing is we've like over romanticized what they did to get rid of James Harden. Just like whatever happened behind the scenes, they're at least somewhat at fault. And like you got these picks, okay, and you're touting this cap space at a time when no one, unless they play for Masai Ujiri, leaves in free agency for nothing when they're on that level. And so what are we doing here? If you want to preserve it for flexibility in trades, fine.
Yeah.
But like don't pretend like we might poach OG Anunoby from the Knicks. No, you're not fucking doing that. And so who's the free agent? Paul George and Kawhi. Kawhi's already extended. Paul George is going to extend. You've been there, done that with James Harden. Who are you going after? Like, who do you really want at this point? I do think this is not where I was headed with this. With the Embiid injury, them coming back down to earth a little bit, I think there needs to be more urgency to make a move this season. And if you still want to preserve your cap space, then and I'm not saying go get Zach LaVine. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm thinking about, if it infringes upon your max space, Terry Rozier could work. The one that makes a lot of sense because I think you could still get to max room with him would be Bojan Bogdanovic if he's on your books next season. Those are all names. You don't have the assets, by the way, though, as much as we talk about, like Philly might have the powder to get a star. No, I don't they might be able to get DeJounte Murray because he's a fringe star. But like, I use this analogy. Do you have the assets to make players who weren't available? Mm-hmm. And the answer is no.
No,
you don't.
I was looking through their inbound picks on your right up here, thinking like, how do we get to Bridges' level of pick equity? And since we just established it's 2 unprotecteds and 2 swaps and a bunch of young players, like they're not getting there. But so that's interesting. So I definitely have viewed the Sixers as like, how do they thread the needle between preserving that flexibility that Daryl Morey has, been so interested in, and then also upping their championship equity, which is like the thing that Daryl Morey has always been most interested in. And how do you do both? But I think your point, it's kind of reframed it for me. Like cap space in free agency just doesn't mean anything anymore. Like, and especially this class, like there's just not like the guys are just, the options are dwindling all the time. Like
and so it's not even about maybe the new CBA changes this over time.
Yeah.
We're not going to feel that effect.
No,
this summer.
At some point, maybe because things always change like this, like cap space will matter again, but like, it doesn't seem like we're going to approach that anytime soon. So then this is just like a buyer that's trying to figure out how to combine, a bunch of their mid-level salaries, like the Batums and Morrises and Covingtons and that kind of thing together to get what, like a two-way wing that's like bigger than DeAnthony Melton. Like that's kind of what you're after. Cause we've established they don't have the juice to get a clear third star, right? I just don't, because if we're saying Murray is the best guy that's maybe available, it's going to be traded. I don't love him here next to Maxey. So like, who is that guy? I think it's,
and I guess, and it's also just, if you're trying to thread the needle though, it's still like threading the needle. If you get Bogdanovic, I assume that would cost you a first round pick.
Yeah.
If you get Keldon Johnson, he'd be kind of interesting for this team. That costs you a first round pick. And so you've preserved the ability to get to one max slot, but now you've expended at least one first round pick. And I don't know, honestly, what Keldon Johnson's value is. He would just intrigue me as a fit on this team. Threading the needle would be like really threading the needle or catering to the cap space. And your picks would be, can we get Tyus Jones without giving up a first type deal? And you could do that, and that's fine. But I just don't know what that does for you this season. And I think Joel Embiid is a dominant player, but the window is both dominant and fickle.
Yeah.
How long is it going to be open?
Who's the most likely guy to get traded here? I'll ask you.
Probably, I just think Marcus Morris Sr., he has such like a huge expiring contract, and Batum can be useful. I think Rocco not playing a ton, someone who could probably still be useful, but they do have a ton of expirings if they're willing to take on money. And it's even if this eats into you, you can't get to a max slot unless you're going to do some other things, I guess. But like Terry Rozier might make a lot of sense for this team. If you're looking for someone bigger, I mentioned Keldon Johnson. That's where you start to run into issues now that OG Anunoby's off the market is because they're not going to be a Jeremy Grant or Kyle Kuzma team. So where's just like this bigger hybrid 2, 3, 4 guy coming from?
I wonder if he weren't hurt, if Marcus Smart might be someone that they could put salary together for. But like, I mean, he plays up. He plays up. He can guard centers. Remember?
Like,
yeah. No,
should this be a DeAndre Hunter team? I don't think they would trade him without giving up a first. But if you were just able to send out expiring contracts and like your highest level seconds available or something.
Yeah. Does he make a little too much to where he forecloses on your, again, we've just shit on cap space, but like, does he knock you out of the salary, the max space?
He's at like 20 million this year.
So that's Keldon Johnson money, basically.
Right. But so next year he's at 21.7. That's like right on the borderline.
That's what I was thinking is I knew it escalated, but
you could always, the other thing is like, especially if you're not giving up a first round, you can always just move him later. Someone will take DeAndre Hunter's money. Yeah.
And it wouldn't be hard to get off some of these other deals ahead of the deadline. Like you said, they got a million expiring guys, like ranging anywhere from like Kelly Oubre and Kenny Martin Jr. like right around 2 million, and you get all the way up to Morris's expiring. So yeah, like there's ways to trim them.
Check in on Markelle Fultz, see what he's up to.
See if he wants to come back, try it again. Yeah, are
they a DFS team? Like that's someone who's on the books, doesn't fuck with your cap space. He doesn't give you any creation.
Yeah, what's that trade look like though? It's like you're trading the Nets of one of your expiring 3-4 combo veterans.
Loco.
Like it's just like what pick is moving and where's it going to get that? I guess you got to give the Nets a pick to do that.
Would you very quickly on them? Would you be in on DeJounte Murray for them? How do you feel about a Murray Maxey?
I'm increasingly convinced that this is more from Murray's side of it. Like he should be the primary point guard, I think probably, as opposed to splitting it with another guard. Like
Maxey defer though.
Yeah. So. Which, you know what? You just gave Maxey the reins. Do we really need to bring in another guard that's going to take? No, I don't know. I don't love it.
So my counterpoint would be DeJounte Murray has changed the way that he plays a lot more than Trae Young has. And so I don't know if you're I think you might be underselling his adaptability.
Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not fair. Yeah. It's very, very possible that all of the issues we're having with Atlanta, like why doesn't it work, is because of Trae Young. And like, that's the guy that they're not, going to move probably. Yeah. I think like, I remember doing like biggest regrets for every team. Maybe we did a pod about it. I can't even remember, but like for the Sixers, I think it was like this market sucks and they have a lot of options and there isn't anybody that justifies them like really going for it with who's out there. And that's kind of too bad. I mean, maybe that's a cop out since we're supposed to be coming up with solutions, but like the problem for them is really conspicuous. Like they've got,
we could even name surprise candidates that appear. We've named Mikal Bridges, who I think is being viewed as untouchable in Brooklyn. Like he's been talked about and lusted. Same with Larry Markkinen. But like the Sixers don't have the assets to get in a bidding war or to win a bidding like war.
I mean, what I did the little like 45-degree head turn. I had an idea. You said like pie in the sky guys, like, could you just send some expiring salary to the Warriors with like a pick for Wiggins? Like not even a first? Like would they just...
Well, there we go. Are you really burning your max cap space that you can have Andrew Wiggins on your team?
Well, I guess, yeah, he is a little bit over, huh? Because he's in the 20s.
Why not give you Klay Thompson?
Yeah, just wait, expiring.
Well, you know what I kind of thought? I didn't mention with Orlando because I was afraid, and now I'm just sure that Orlando Magic fans probably aren't listening. But like Jonathan, if they're just looking to like Jonathan Isaac and Markelle Fultz for Klay Thompson, like just you want to get your shooter in there. Here's your shooter.
There he is. He will shoot it. Not a problem. You'll get your per 36 3-point attempts up. That's for sure. Yeah, I think that's good on the Sixers. Do we forget anything with them?
No, the Raptors are extremely interesting. Are they buyers or sellers?
That's the eternal question, Dan. Because how would you categorize the Anunoby trade? It's a little bit of both, I guess.
It was a win-win trade. And so that you would call it a recalibration.
I think it's kind of, you could reframe the question of, should they trade Siakam or not? And that determines whether they're buyers or sellers, I guess,
So
or at least sellers or not sellers.
Here's my stance.
Yeah, cook on why they should keep Siakam, because I'm very interested in that.
Siakam's fucking good. That's why you keep like
okay,
all these
that's
trade
good. We got it. That's done.
He's two-time All NBA player who's been playing very well lately. He was and he's still like shuttled to and fro in the pecking order, still finding ways to contribute. I think on the right, like he can slide up to the 5. He's not going to compromise your defense. He can lead the fast break in transition. He's learned over the years to like play off the ball. If he has better spacing around him, the move for the Raptors. Well, here's my caveat. If Siakam has communicated that he doesn't want to be here, or he will only stay on a 5-year max, which as of right now, based off the salary cap projections, is like 5 years, $247 million. I understand the hesitance. If we're quibbling over giving him a 4-year max at like 190, that takes him through his age 33 season, cry me a fucking river. Pascal Siakam is an all NBA player. The first 2 or 3 years of that deal are going to be fine. Deal with the rest later, especially if you're not getting value from other teams. So unless he has communicated that he is leaving, unhappy there, or that he only wants a 5-year max, and it can't even be 5 years, $200 million, where it's below the max, and it's okay, we have him for 5 years, but
or even like 4 and an option. I mean, like, just if so, you're saying, I guess that's interesting. We haven't had like that reporting yet, because that determines like what they should do ultimately. Is like, if you can retain him, this is what you're getting to, I think, at a number that's not absurd, then just fucking keep him. Because
my whole thing is, I don't think a 4-year max for him is absurd. And the report from Amick was that he's going to be looking for a max wherever he goes. Well, players want to make the most money possible. Go fucking figure.
Right.
And that's not a shot at Amick. It's just a shot at people that think he's not. Look, the 5-year max stuff I get, or if he's unhappy, then you move him. You know what the actual play is here? And it's I don't know if it'd be selling or if it'd be buying. It'd probably be another recalibration. Is we need to get away from Jakob Poeltl, and we stretch the floor even more around him, and we have some more offensive dynamism around him right now. Like, this can work. And I think that there is redundancies with him and Scotty Barnes, but overlap doesn't automatically equal like inability to coexist. Yeah. And I just don't think the Raptors are closer to them coexisting now. We're kind of seeing it. Nudge it further in that direction. Now, who wants Jakob Poeltl's contract? That's a whole different story. But like, if you just subbed out Jakob Poeltl's contract with like Naz Reid or something, I'm not saying trade Jakob Poeltl for Naz Reid. The Timberwolves don't need another center like who doesn't shoot. They have Rudy Gobert. So, but like, that is, I think the Raptors should be, maybe it's not buyers, but like, they do have Gary Trent Jr.'s salary. And I think it was Discord user Rome 8180 said, could they be a Mitchell team if he becomes available? And it's like, I don't know if they have the pick equity, but like, they do have some salaries that could make it work. And if you involve a 3rd and 4th team, I'm not opposed to them. They're not going to make like the mega consolidation blockbuster trade, but if it's to just bring in another floor spacing big who is, look, we all know I love him, Chris Boucher forever, but like someone who's going to be more consistent and not look so clumsy on, every other night or every night for weeks at a time, and then goes through like a mini hot streak. Can we get some more floor spacing in the front court to split with Siakam? I'm keeping him. Like you've already telegraphed that you want actual players, actually good players. You know who's an actually good player, Grant? Pascal Siakam.
Right.
And I get that something feels off there. It feels like they've treated him poorly. There was the report that there wasn't communication between them. So if there really is something sinister going on behind the scenes, then yeah, you can't. The disaster scenario is keeping Pascal Siakam and not extending him. And so I'm very curious. We've not seen definitive reporting on this, but he can sign an extension with the Raptors, like the 4-year, 190, whatever it's going to be. If they haven't offered that, I'm not going to say I think that's lunacy, but like I would offer that.
Well, and like we haven't really talked about this, but like we talk about it all the time with other players, just asset preservation. Offer that to him, because it certainly seems like a lot of teams are interested in him and are at least, it's not like the Kings backed out of talks because they didn't want to pay Siakam what it was going to cost. They seem to have backed out of talks because he wouldn't say, I'm going to stay here. So it's like there are
the Keegan Murray stuff too, but I guess the reporting was Herter, Barnes, and picks, which is just like maybe the cost of Pascal Siakam is a lot cheaper than I thought, and that's why Indiana doesn't want to give up Jarvis Walker.
Or teams overvalue their own players all the time, and that's just.
Or it's the free agency element too, like you mentioned.
That's what I mean. I think if you could, like you said, whatever it is, 4 for 190 or like 184, whatever it is, just pay him that, and then if if you want to move him, you're going to be able to move him for more when he's in the second year of that deal or whatever than you can right now, because there's just more security, and he can't you use the threat of not re-signing as a way to dissuade teams from giving up stuff. Like, you're just, team control is an asset like on its own. So like, I was always, again, I always skew this way. I'm like, you have to move him because the risk of losing him for nothing is like terrifying. And I just couldn't live with myself if I'm the GM and I let that happen, because
Right.
idiots like me are going to be like, this idiot, like, can you believe he just let Van Vliet walk? I'll never shut up about it. So if you let that happen with Siakam, that's really scary. But like, if you don't, I mean, you can still offer him more than other teams. So like, if he gets to free agency, you have that option, but not. I don't know. All that's to say, the longer this goes on and the thinner the options get and the worse the returns look, the more sense it makes to just let him go to free agency and hope you can keep him, I guess, unless you can extend him now. But it doesn't. It seems like they should have or would have if they could.
Yeah. So it's like, if you offered him the extension and he turned it down, that's where
you trade him.
That's where things get weird. With that all being said, is he the most likely player to be traded?
So the other guy you think about as a contender for that is Gary Trent, right? Like, that's
just with the expiring.
Yeah. And you'd think, I mean, maybe Dennis Schroeder's in that conversation, just because, teams that need a point guard.
The T-Wolves. Is there a deal we throw Kyle Anderson's expiring and Shake Milton? Does that get you in a second? Or a pick swap? Does that get you Dennis Schroeder? That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So like, he's got a market, but I think even though we just belabored this topic for several minutes, like, I think it's probably still Siakam, just because, there's enough smoke to be fire there. And even if he's not 50% likely to be traded at this point, like, he's still probably higher than.
It's not like, you don't think it's like a Thad Young or an Otto Porter Jr. just because they're expiring. And like, also this team, well, Thad Young's playing right now because of the injuries, as is Jonte Porter. They also kind of need, all of a sudden, like, the team that was too like-sized feels like they need like wings. Weird.
Yeah.
Like,
well, once they get Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga, they'll just have a bunch of extras. So they'll be back to Project 6-9-ish in no time.
That is the final team in the Atlantic Division, which means
we did it.
Yes, it means we did it, but it also means that it's time for stat padding, guess a player edition. I have a bunch for you. I think you said you have. Do you have any for me?
I have one for you, courtesy of Rubik's Gal, as always. So
since we have so few on your end, let's go to B Riches. He's got two for you. Okay. So you need to what do you need to do?
God, I got to get inside the mind of a psychopath. I didn't get Kelly Oubre last time until you had to give me a clue, I think. So technically I was stumped, I think, if let the record reflect. I believe that's where we are.
Clue number one, drafted in the lottery in the late 90s. My top two most similar players are Kevin Johnson and Russell Westbrook.
Okay, so it's a guard, but those player comparisons I hate them with every fiber of my being.
Clue two, averaging just under 20 points per game for my career. I made more than 5 All-Star teams and was first team All-NBA twice.
All right, late 90s lottery pick. 5 All-Stars, 2 All-NBA. First team, you said?
First team twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
A bit of a chucker. My career true shooting percentage was .519 while taking 16 plus shots per game. As such, I didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs in my first 8 tries.
Wow. So this guy's in the playoffs all the time. Okay. 8 tries. Wait, didn't get out of the first round. I should get this now. This is already bothering me. 8 tries. Couldn't get out of the first. Oh, God damn it. Who is this? Okay. Give me the next clue.
Despite my lack of playoff success, I'm a Hall of Famer and was ranked 55th in the Athletics top 575 players of all time.
Is this just McGrady?
Yeah, it's Tracy McGrady.
Okay. Because what he had the series where he like said it feels so good to get out of the first round or something, and they had not won the series yet, and they lost, right?
Yeah, the next 2 clues I think you would have gotten was my Adidas's shoe in 2002 was absolutely sick and ranked 7th all time by Slam Magazine. Grant, you almost certainly owned these.
We've discussed the virtues of the T-Mac shoes for sure.
And then there's my much more talented cousin is Vince Carter. But you definitely
not a lot of guys you could say have more physical talent than Tracy McGrady, but there might be one. Who is it? Who's the player comparison? Kevin Johnson and who?
Russell Westbrook, which is
What are we doing? Basketball Reference, get this off the site. This is the worst feature on a wonderful, wonderful resource that I use every day, but this has to stop.
Are you trying to get that sweet, sweet brand ambassadorship that they keep with all that? You're a great website.
I'm doing a public service because that stupid feature is more misleading than helpful at all times.
So B Rich has another one for you.
Staying in the mind of a psychopath.
Yes. Clue 1. I was drafted in the lottery in the early 2000s after attending high school in both Wisconsin and Maine.
Oh, Maine. Okay.
No guesses? That didn't do it for you? That's weird.
Cooper Flagg, isn't he from Maine? Was not born in the early 2000s.
Clue 2. An immaculate grid all-star. I played for 9 teams during my 14-year career.
Oh, 9 teams in my 14 years. Early 2000s lottery pick, you said?
Correct.
Wisconsin and Maine. Okay, continue.
Averaging 14 points, 5 boards for my career. I was a 2-time All-Star in the late 2000s. In both my All-Star seasons, my team got its ass kicked by LeBron's Cavs in the first round. To be fair, when we were swept in 2006, 2007, I was hurt, which wasn't uncommon for me throughout my career.
Oh, man. So a million teams.
Yeah, roughly.
We're in the East playoffs in the 06 range. LeBron keeps beating early 2000s draft pick. All right. I don't think I have it yet.
That's a damn shame for you, isn't it?
Should I have it?
I won 1 championship when I was midway through my career. Surprise, surprise. I missed that entire playoff run with injuries.
Oh. So his team won a title.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say around like late 2000s. I'm not trying to read your face for information, but he wasn't part of it.
Year, but that's just, I feel like might be a giveaway.
Say again?
I could tell you the year, but it feels like it might be a giveaway.
Well, because then I could just guess who won the title that year. All right, go ahead. What's the next clue?
My sick nickname was used as a justification for why I'd make at least the quarterfinals of an NBA-wide one-on-one tournament by multiple roommates in Grant's college apartment. Nickname Puff Juice.
It's Caron Butler.
Correct.
Yeah, we had a discussion once of like, let's bracket out a one-on-one tournament of NBA players. I don't know what year this would have been, but it was right at the peak of like, oh my God, Caron Butler is like the most physically intimidating two-way player in the league. And he was like a 1 seed, I think, in that ill-advised hypothetical tournament we made up.
The other thing I'll say is just Google Caron Butler and straws.
Oh, okay. Oh, he eats them, doesn't he? Or he chews on them all the time.
Yeah.
What a weirdo.
Yeah, he's the weirdo. All right, Rubik's Gal. We have 3 from her that we need to catch up on. We've had these stash. Clue 1. I wasn't highly recruited out of high school, and I got only 1 scholarship offer from a Division II college.
Did we do this one?
Oh, you did. It's Duncan Robinson. I apologize.
That's right.
I
don't think I got it.
We did Danny Ainge. All right.
You did. You're damn right we did Danny Ainge. I got that in 1, I think.
You did really well on that one. Okay, so there's actually only 1 from Rubik's Gal. And and we got a trivia from Rubik's. I'm just scrolling too far up. I thought I was further behind than we were. Okay, clue 1. I won my first and only NBA championship as the starting point guard of this Eastern Conference team, but most people remember me from my first team, which went to the conference finals.
That's interesting. Starting point guard, but most people remember him from a team that didn't make it as far. All right.
No, that went to a conference finals. Yeah.
So wait, read that clue for me again. I'm sorry.
I won my first and only NBA title as the starting point guard of this Eastern Conference team, but most people remember me from my first team, which went to the conference finals.
All right. I'm not sure I understand that exactly, but let's do the next.
So he won a title with an Eastern Conference team, but he was on another team for most of his career that went to a conference finals, and that's the team for which he's remembered the most.
Okay.
Clue 2. I chose to play college ball at Marshall, but when my coach, Billy Donovan, accepted a head coaching job at Florida, I transferred to the Gators myself. Among my highlights in my 1 season at Florida include setting the Gators' single game assist record with 17 and getting suspended for cannabis abuse 3 times. When the NBA announced its new anti-drug program in 2000, guess who was the first player suspended for non-compliance? So clue number 2 is I went to Florida dished a bunch of assists, and was a pothead.
Yeah, why don't I have this immediately? Eastern Conference point guard from Florida. I'm already annoyed at myself that. Okay, what's the next one?
Early in my career, I was very turnover prone, peaking at close to 3.5 turnovers a game in my sophomore year, resulting in my being benched at crucial points in tight games, including the fourth quarters of every game in the conference finals mentioned earlier. But I significantly curtailed my extravagant playing style in my later years.
Oh, no, it's not him.
I mean, you could guess. You haven't guessed once.
I know. I was gonna make a guess, but it would have been really stupid because the guy didn't go to Florida.
All right. Well, then, yeah, that would have been a stupid guess.
Yes. Why can't I think of Florida point guards? All right. What's the next one?
Clue 4. I had a decent but inconsistent outside shot, which I loved. Nearly 50% of my shot attempts were from downtown, but I was more interested in making a no-look pass than shooting my shot. I have 1.5 times as many regular season assists as I do field goals. 4,600 plus assists to about 3,100 field goals.
I'm so annoyed right now. They're just like, there can't be that many guys. A Florida point guard. And when Billy Donovan was there, so that gives us I keep thinking of like the Noah Horford Florida teams, and this guy just can't be on those teams. I don't think, or if he is, I just can't think of the guy, and I'm kicking myself. It's not Corey Brewer, because he's not a point guard. All right, do you have another clue, or am I just gonna miss?
Yeah, you got 2 more.
Okay.
Clue 5. I was given my nickname by a media relations associate who was so enthralled by my schoolyard/street ball style that was so atypical of someone who looked like me.
Why? I can't think of Florida guards. I can't do it.
Well, then stop thinking about that and start thinking about the other clue.
Well, I feel like that's the way to get there.
Final clue. The move
clue.
I'm best known for was seen only once in the rookie game at the All-Star weekend, and since Raif LaFrance never made that shot.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know why I didn't do this way sooner. It's Jason Williams.
Yes, I'm white chocolate.
Yeah. Why didn't the Marshall thing triggered the West Virginia stuff, and like he played high school basketball with Randy Moss, and Randy Moss went to Marshall, but then I for some reason like didn't associate him with Florida. I don't know why.
I didn't either. I thought that was actually a tough one, but you did get it on the clue that I would have gotten it on.
So the Eastern Conference team he won a title with was who? The
Heat. No,
the Heat. I guess I blocked that out.
Maybe should I? Well, am I lying? I'll look and say I thought it was the Heat.
Well, then I just think of him on the Kings and Grizzlies.
The Kings is what he was remembered for, and they did go to championships in 2006 with Miami.
Man, all right, good clues. I just got hung up on the Florida thing, and I wasn't going to get there for Jason Williams. That's weird.
The next one that Rubik's has said to be aired on or after January 25th, so we have to skip that. Let's do a couple for Mike Hernishin before we skedaddle. I
want to give you. I got a Rubik's guess a player for you too. We can't forget that.
Let's do. Mike has a bunch. Let's do 2, or if you do them quickly, we can do 3. Grant, I'll let you. Do 3.
Well, we'll see. I can't make any promises after this last one.
Clue 1. I was drafted straight out of high school in 2000.
What's that guy's name? Was it by the Hawks? What is his name? Okay, keep going.
Clue 2. I broke out in the last year of my rookie contract where I ultimately was traded for Gordon Gierchik.
Okay, so it's not DeMar Johnson. That was the name I was trying to think of. Out of high school for the Hawks in 2000. Traded for, who'd you say?
Well, I don't know where you got the Hawks from. It says I was drafted out of high school in 2000. You're just saying the Hawks.
Why did I say the Hawks? Maybe this
if I said it, I apologize. I don't remember saying it.
I don't think so. I think I invented that. Okay, drafted out of high school in 2000, traded for Gordon Gierchik, you said.
Yes. Clue 3. That trade didn't work for me as I accomplished very little before signing a vet minimum with the Gilbert Arenas era Wizards.
Is this Deshaun Stevenson?
That is correct. Nice job. There were 8 clues.
And
you got on clue 3.
Unheralded out of high school guy, or often forgotten.
Clue 4, I think, was the best one. My most notable accomplishment during this time was getting into a feud with LeBron James and having my friend Soulja Boy write a diss track about Jay-Z in a weird feud involving LeBron, Jay-Z, Beyonce, and a former Destiny's Child member.
That's so funny because I'm working on for BR ahead of like a Lakers Clippers game coming up, players that have had like actual rivalries with LeBron. And I'm like, do I do Deshaun Stevenson? Is anyone gonna remember that? Because that's getting pretty old now. But now that there's been it seems like fate. I have to include him now.
So this one, I don't know if this counts as a clue, but this is called the player turned coach portion of Who Am I?
All right.
Clue 1, I was drafted in 1997 to be John Stockton's backup.
This is Earl Watson.
That is incorrect.
Howard Isley.
That is also incorrect. You want to keep going?
Okay.
I played on the Jazz from 97 to 2001. That was the longest I played for any team.
This guy became a coach is the idea here.
Yes.
Man, I felt really good about the Earl Watson one and the Howard Isley one, even though I don't think Howard Isley ever coached.
That's like a Nick Young heat check.
It really was. I was feeling myself on that one. All right. Jazz was supposed to replace John Stockton. Played for 97 to 01. Got it.
Clue 3. I set an NBA record for consecutive missed field goal attempts to open a season, missing my first 22 to start the 2001 campaign with the Atlanta Hawks. There's the Hawks that you've been dying to get into.
I knew it was coming.
So I still shot 47% that year.
I don't remember stuff like that. I don't the missed shot thing.
Clue 4. I won my only ring in 2007 behind another Hall of Fame point guard before ultimately retiring in 2009 and joining the coaching staff of the team I won said ring with.
I'm just hung up on the Jazz supposed to replace John Stockton thing. I feel like I should have it there.
I mean, it's possible. I don't know for sure, but
all right. What's the next clue?
Clue 5. I learned from one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport before getting my first job as a head coach with the Magic. It didn't go so well.
Oh, is it Jacques Vaughn?
Correct.
Okay. Forgot about the Utah era of Jacques Vaughn.
Yeah, the clue 6 was funny. There were 7 clues, but I'm laughing at this. It took 5 years and DeAndre Jordan for me to get my next chance as head coach.
That's a good clue.
Let's do one more. She got the first one so quickly, and he has a bunch in here. Appreciate everyone taking the time to do these. If you want to participate and guess a player, join our Discord. Email us hardwoodknocks@gmail.com. Best ways to do it. Okay, this is still player turn coach.
Oh, all right.
Clue 1. I was drafted as a defensive stalwart out of Clemson in 1998 by the Dallas Mavericks.
All right.
Clue 2. I made the playoffs 6 of my first years in the league, only being a starter for 2 of those years where I played on the wing with Carmelo Anthony.
Oh. On the wing with Carmelo Anthony. So what did he get a year for when he's playing with Carmelo?
No, he did not give a year.
All right.
I was part of the OJ Mayo for Kevin Love draft day trade.
Okay, sorry. Go back to I need to like reorient what year we're in or whatever. So what's the first clue?
I was drafted as a defensive stalwart out of Clemson in 1998 by the Mavs.
98, and so you said, and in 08 he's playing with Carmelo, or you didn't give a year?
The timeline is he made the playoffs in 6 of his first 7 seasons, and so you're looking 98 through 2004.
98
and then only being a starter for 2 of those years where I played on the wing with Melo. So it had to be Melo was drafted in 2003.
Yeah.
So it had to be those first 2 years.
Those Denver teams. Man, that should do it right there. Guy on the wing with Denver.
I didn't know it when I saw it, if it's any consolation.
You didn't know it?
No, I never would have gotten this one.
Oh, okay. On the wing in early Denver, 98 out of Clemson. Okay, sorry. What's the next clue?
My first coaching gig came under the tutelage of Kevin McHale.
So are we in Minnesota or Houston? Okay. What's the next one?
After McHale was fired, I became attached to the hip of his then replacement, as I have never coached somewhere he hasn't.
Ooh. Well, I still don't know where Kevin McHale is here. I still don't have it. How many more clues do I have?
Only one.
Shit. Okay, let's hear it.
I got my promotion to being an associate head coach / top assistant last year. So 2022 or 2023, I'm assuming, where I led a surprisingly good defense. In fact, it was the top defense in the league.
Oh, okay. So this is embarrassing. I got to think who had the best. So Cleveland. Okay. So Bickerstaff replaces McHale in Houston, and this guy is on Bickerstaff's staff, I'm guessing, because Cleveland was number 1 last year, I think.
You are correct. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that because I only look at the cleaning the glass stats, and
I
those
do
could be
too.
different.
I think it's still Cleveland though.
It is. So it's Cleveland, and I didn't look at the NBA, but it's Cleveland per garbage time with filtering out garbage time.
Oh man, so a guy that played with Carmelo on the Nuggets early, drafted by Dallas. God, I don't know if I'm gonna. And he's a quote unquote Bickerstaff guy.
So I'll add a clue here. It's the only reason that I can.
All right.
His last name begins with B, just like Bickerstaff.
With B. That's not gonna get me there. There's too many last names with B.
Do you concede?
I think I have to concede because I would just
Greg Buckner.
The Dallas thing. Yeah, I did not remember him with Carmelo in Denver or being associated with Bickerstaff, but I do remember Greg Buckner playing for Dallas. I think that was a good one.
Yeah, that was right in Mike H's wheelhouse too, because he's a coaching sicko.
Oh man.
So he's got more, but we'll leave him. Do you want to give me Rubik's gals before we?
Yep. This is
you
unvetted.
Are so far out of frame. Is your back okay?
I'm leaning down. Do you need me, or you're not gonna cut these up, right?
No, I'm just laughing because you're like peeking out.
I'm reclining. All right. So I have not vetted this at all. I'm learning of this as you are, except I did scroll to the bottom so I know who the player is.
I would hope
courtesy of Rubik.
You're just doing this without knowing the answer. It would be great.
Yeah, I'll just play along with you. Guess the player. It's trade time. Number 1, the defining characteristic of my NBA career was established months before I was even drafted, when the pick that turned out to be me was traded by the Bucks along with Ray Allen and others to the Seattle Supersonics for Gary Payton and Desmond Mason.
It was traded to the Supersonics.
Yes. With Ray Allen in the deal that brought Payton and Desmond Mason to a team that is by the Bucks. So to the Bucks.
So Ray Allen went to the Bucks, or the Bucks traded Ray Allen to the Sonics?
Was traded by the Bucks with Ray Allen to the Sonics. So this is the trade that gets Allen to the Sonics from the Bucks.
Rashard Lewis?
No.
Okay.
Number 2, 5 years later, I was part of a 3-team trade that undid part of the trade in Clue 1, sending Desmond Mason back from the Bucks to OKC and me back from OKC to Milwaukee.
Oh man, I should know that one, shouldn't I?
There's going to be a couple more just scrolling ahead that like you are good at remembering stuff like that is in this clue. So this is a good guess a player for you.
I still don't have anything. He was traded from OKC to Milwaukee.
Correct. After initially being traded from Milwaukee to the Sonics.
No, that doesn't line up with Sean Kemp's. Did he ever play for the Bucks either? That's a bad guess. Go ahead.
All right. Number 3, I signed as a free agent with the T-Wolves in 2010, but the trade talks were never too far. And in 2013, I was part of a 3-team trade that sent me to, you guessed it, Milwaukee again.
It's not Michael Redd, is it?
No, it's not Michael Redd.
What year?
So this trade we're discussing right now that sends this guy back to Milwaukee for the 3rd time, I guess, was in 2013.
All right, keep going.
All right. Number 4, the honeymoon period didn't even last a year, and I was traded again at the deadline to Charlotte, which was the Bobcats at the time. That's probably not going to help you too much. All right, we're getting to where you're going to get it, I think. Maybe not this one, but definitely the next one. In the summer of 2014, I signed with the Magic, for whom I featured in 47 games.
Oh, that was it?
That's it. The next clue is, I think, when you'll get it. And there's a nice turn of phrase here because we just talked about the Magic, and Rubik's Gal says, but the real magic happened in June of 2015. Are you ready? I remember being asked about this trade on the radio and not being sure what the answer was. The question was, where is this guy right now? Like, what team is he on? Because he got, okay. So take a deep breath here, Grant. Magic traded me to the Grizzlies for the draft rights to Giannis Tima on June 24th. The next day, the Grizzlies traded me to the Hornets for Matt Barnes. Charlotte traded me to OKC for Jeremy Lamb later that day. Things settled for a week until the Thunder traded me to the Raptors for the rights.
Luke Rittenauer?
That's correct. Yeah, that's right.
I didn't realize how far he dated back.
Yeah,
when you said Supersonics, I was like, oh.
That was the clue I knew you would get because it was recent enough, and we were both like in it at the time with BR. And the last one, number 7, my nickname is Frodo. Gee, I wonder why. Because so like, yes, it is Luke Rittenauer. I remember being on the radio like right at the deadline or right after it. I don't know why I said yes to do a radio hit at the time. And the guy asked me, like,
very ballsy of someone to ask you to do a radio hit right after the deadline.
I don't know. I don't know why. Again, I don't know why I said yes. Because it's like your head is spinning back then, especially when we were just like firing off, 10 things in a day. But like he said, so like jokingly, like, so where's Luke Rittenauer now? And I was like, huh, yeah, right. I just like wasn't sure. Like we quickly moved on. But do you ever have that happen to you? It doesn't happen that often where you're just like not sure.
So every year, they actually haven't asked me to do it this year, but I'm assuming I'll do it. I do live trade grades for Bleacher Report. The fucking like pick protection details or the equity, like they just announced these trades.
Oh, you don't have
is going to the Knicks without any assets. And so you have to keep track of all this other information while their trades are going down. I'm always paranoid that I'm forgetting major details. And when there's like multiplayer trades or players are rerouted. So it happens to me every single year is basically my point.
Where someone's asking you a question live on air and you're like, boy, wouldn't I like to know?
Do you still get the text or the DMs every year where it's just like, hey, just figured I'd ask, do you think you could come on at like 3:05 and wrap up the trade deadline?
You come on in like 7 minutes. Nope.
Yeah. Obviously people don't know your schedule most of the time, but like on a day like that, it's like, no,
you still do more radio than I do. I started just saying no too often. And
I try to karmically say yes to requests that I can. I've gotten better at saying, like, I was asked to go on a friend of the podcast pod this upcoming weekend, but it just wasn't going to work with my schedule. So I actually said, hey, I'll go on another time, but I can't do it. I have gotten worse at, like, sometimes my work phone will get messages from producers and I'll just forget to answer because I'm so busy at the time. I actually think there's one pending from 2 days ago. So I feel like shit, but it's just, you get so busy. It's not personal.
Can't believe you have a work phone. You buried the lead.
Like, well, yeah, and the work phone is like, as soon as the NFL playoffs start, like that's when everything ticks up and like people start to care, or Christmas start to care about the NBA. So I get all these requests. So I appreciate everyone who's nice and will give you like a, hey, how are you? Rather than if you haven't talked to me in a year and you're just like, can I get you on at X? Sometimes I'll be like, I'll still do it, but it's like, okay, cool.
So I got some work phone questions, but I don't want to neglect this because Rubik's Gal, as often happens, has provided other random facts about Luke Rittenauer that I haven't read, and I'm going to read them now because I would like to learn with you. Other random facts: Luke Rittenauer was a McDonald's All-American. All right, he also led the charge to the Elite Eight while setting a University of Oregon season record for assists, 218. He was a starting point. This will get us our years and show how far back he goes. He was the starting point guard for the 04-05 Sonics, who lost to the eventual champs San Antonio in the conference semis. 04-05. How about that?
That's wild stuff.
All in all, not a bad career for someone known for 1 week of his final offseason. Yeah, that's for sure. That is the thing you remember about Luke Rittenauer now, is like he was traded 4 times in a day, basically. Let's see. Oh, the work phone thing, because we got nowhere to be, right? We don't need to go to sleep or record more pods. Do you take your work phone with you all the time? Or do you leave it at home if you're...
I've gotten better, like at like family events, or like I'm trying to be more because I'm just like, I say this all the time and I know, so I want to give myself, I suck at giving myself credit or accepting compliments. I know, even though
one of your best qualities, your humility. So try to deflect that compliment right now.
I'm about to be not humble. So there you go.
Okay, go.
I do know I work hard. I constantly feel like I'm not good enough or I don't do enough. I'm probably trying to do too much. But like, as I've gotten a little bit older and I've seen people like you or just some other friends where it's like you're able to be in the business that I am in, and you guys also have actual families, and I'm just a shitty husband not being able to manage work. So I try to be more present at stuff like that. But like when I got married, I dealt with Jimmy Butler fallout. Fun fact, not one of our bosses, not BK, like actually reached out to me the day of my engagement party to write about like that I had taken off for. And I almost like answered and said, like, yeah, I could. And my fiance, my wife now, but my fiance that looked at me was like, I will fucking kill you.
I was gonna say, you're married, so you obviously said no.
And she's like one of the most understanding people when it comes to work. So I've gotten better at that, but like there's still, if I try to go on vacation, like I'm gonna try to go away after the trade deadline to like catch a breather, just because not taking any time off mid-season when you do what we do is just a recipe for burnout. It's just so last year, and then I didn't take off any time like in the off season. I did some traveling, but it wasn't like I was trying to fit in all these visits to friends. So I'm just burnt out. So I got better at leaving my work phone, but like I'll take it with me. Like I have 2 phones at the gym. And it was a way to, I thought it was going to create a separation, but now it's like, well, I have everything forwarded to each phone.
Yeah.
So it's like, why are you, I don't want to like talk to people, whether they're producers, podcasters, or like I don't have like super sources, but like people who work for teams. I just wanted something separate for that. And also, I guess because I've allowed myself to be more accessible than you, like I get a lot of radio and podcast requests.
Oh yeah.
So like,
well, and you're more online than I am just generally. Like I'm not, it's the end of the podcast.
I think I could probably,
I was gonna say, should I admit I don't have Twitter on my phone? Like I just don't like, and I don't have TikTok. I don't have any social media on my phone. And I don't have 2 phones. I just have the one.
I get it though. Like it's probably healthier to do it that way. Like, and if I wasn't doing this podcast, I say this all the time, the podcast is the least profitable thing that I do in my life. And it is probably the thing that consumes me the most when you factor in just like the editing and that team by team series.
Yeah. So, anybody who wants to know what the pre-record discussions are like, you're hearing a lot of it right now. It's just talking.
It's about Grant and I trying to figure out work-life balance. And I think Grant is a lot better at it. And Grant, for anyone, so when you're not on the pod and I get questions asked about myself, you invariably come up where it's like, well, who's your favorite, whatever. And I'll always shout out you.
That was very nice. I did listen to what you said I really appreciate that.
So, but like you've helped me, criticism bounces off me more from social media since I've started podcasting with you, because ever since you handled the J-Dub stuff, whereas like I put out that clip because I thought you had an interesting take that went viral.
Did I say you should have been like, we should think about him as rookie of the year or something like that?
And you picked him for rookie of the year.
Yeah. Okay.
And people shit on you, and I felt so bad, and you didn't even know it was happening. And so it's just like, and then you found out, you're like, whatever, dude, like they're strangers. And so like, that was a flashbulb moment for me where I still probably get impacted because when we and it's probably the same way though. I recognize this when we're criticizing players for being bad, most of these players aren't lazy. And so it's like they're putting in all this time and effort to perfect their craft. So I do get sensitive when people, even when they're innocuous, where like someone emailed us to compliment the show, but was like, your intro music sucks. Can my band do it for you?
Oh, well, first of all, answer. Maybe it could have had you not come in so hot with negativity. And also the music in the intro is objectively great. And so that's a wrong opinion. This happened again recently for me, and we'll get out of here eventually. But so like, yeah, I straight up forgot about the J-Dub stuff. By the way, Paolo's great, but like J-Dub's been pretty solid. That's not a ridiculous take.
Please don't, dude. I'm going to cut this up.
I'm not doubling down, but I do every so often, like I'll still catch heat for an article I did that said Domantas Sabonis we are ranking the most overrated players in the league. This is like last year at some point, which is still like, that's a setup for failure because whoever's at number 1, the fan base is going to be incensed. And like being overrated is like, what does that even mean? Anyway, I still get shit about Sabonis ranking first there. I contend that like, yeah, anyone who's first there, that's too bad. But like, read the slide I wrote. Like there's nothing, show me the lie in anything I wrote still. But some of that still gets through on social media. And I had the thought yesterday, someone must have come up with this already, but it was just like, cause I was starting to feel bad about it. I was like, shit, I don't like to hear like just like personal attacks for like an opinion or like things like, it's so stupid, but it's like, if a drunk asshole is yelling at you on the street, like you're not obligated to listen or care. And that's
Right.
basically what Twitter is drunk assholes yelling at you on the street. Like that is real. It's strangers that you'll never see. Like that's
And
really what it is. So like you just can't care. You can't care.
sometimes when you kill them with kindness, they'll be like nicer to you back. Like I got dragged Knicks Muse or whatever it's called. I thought it was a funny tweet saying, for tampering with Jalen Brunson, the Knicks as like recompense will stay on their treadmill of mediocrity for eternity. So they quote tweeted it while the Knicks were like blowing out one of the teams with OG Anunoby. I retweeted it. I was like, yeah. And some people were being mean. So I quote tweeted them and I was like, yeah, I was wrong. I was really wrong. But like one of the people said, they'd be like, you know, I was like, let's not pretend. They were like, everyone knew that the Knicks were going to be great last year. I was like, let's not pretend that people weren't wanting Tom Thibodeau to be fired through like December. So I was like, let's not rewrite like how rocky they were. But like, I can accept being wrong. I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older. I think a lot of people just get, and I understand it. I'm sensitive sometimes when I'm wrong or if there's a hill I'm going to die on. We had some people in Discord were saying that I disagreed, and I probably still disagree on the level of defense he's played this year. But yeah, CJ McCollum's been really good defensively, in part because the Pelicans have done a great job of insulating him. So like I can recognize I'm wrong about that. I can recognize I'm wrong about other takes, but people are just so aggressive and mean because sports just like, I guess it desensitized me. Like I'm still attached to my sports team a little bit. Like I can never picture. And when I was younger, I said something to Stephon Marbury once that was just so out of pocket and disgusting, and I regret it. It wasn't racist or anything, in case anybody cares about that. That
was my assumption, just knowing
I made light of the Vaseline stuff that he was doing. And it's just like, look back on that. It just wasn't cool. But like when I'll look at profile pictures sometimes, and it's like you see like some of these people are like teachers or principals, and it's like, okay, well, you're not young, and what are we doing here? Like I get that stuff's annoying, but in large part because of you, like it's inspired me or it's enabled me to just move past it. Oh, like a little bit. I'm still definitely more attached to it than you are. Well, like
that's great to hear. I'm glad. That's I like for me though, it's just like I have to detach from it because it does bother me so much. So if I like if I like wait around in it for too long, it'll just like ruin my day. And like, that's ridiculous. Like that, like no one should.
It's weird how that works. And it's even some of the stuff that's self-inflicted that if people are still listening and really want to peek behind this podcast, I'm putting up like 5 to 6 shorts a week. And some of them are really short, but like these things can take me hours to make.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't put one up today. And it got so late. I ended up putting up at 9 p.m. But I was feeling so guilty that I didn't make time to make this short. That doesn't make us money. It might get us some subscribers. I don't even know if they're going to listen to any of our longer form content though. And like, I'm just doing in guilt for so long. So instead of doing something that I'm on a deadline for and like getting ahead of the game, I did that. And like, that's just how twisted my mind works. And I do think it's definitely, I think everyone has this to some degree, but there's definitely something about this industry that foments you're never doing enough. And I think it might be true across every industry, but like the work-life balance is always going to be terrible because this is entertainment to some people. It's just like, even if I miss, like, I'm not responding to every Discord message. Like, if I take days to answer a DM because I didn't see it, or like, I'm not up to date on, we have all these rooms for different teams. If I'm not reading everything, I feel guilty. Like, I'm not doing enough.
And that's the downside of me being less engaged than you are. Is like, I feel bad that like, oh man, look at all these have piled up. I don't feel like I'm engaging with all these cool people that are like, you know, a big reason that the podcast is doing what it's doing. But I just can't, I don't have the bandwidth for it.
I love all of the I've had some very good co-hosts on this podcast and some fantastic guests. And you though have cared or put in the level of at least like feigning to care more so than anyone, which makes it, I always recognize, like you've all talked about like, well, I should learn to edit this stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to ask you to do that because I'm the psycho that's deciding that we need to have 3, like this week, you know what I felt guilty about? I did one podcast solo. Then I did like an emergency short one on the John Morant injury. This one could have been our third, but I was like on 3 hours of sleep today. I was like, no, you know what? That John Morant one doesn't really count. I got to get a third episode up there. So I like sat down, prepped all the news stuff. So, but you have been the person who's like most invested in it, which I very much appreciated. So,
I mean, it's just going to be a back patting fest, I think, at the end of these podcasts from now. No, and
look, this is when we announce that we're shuttering. Hardwood Knocks.
Sorry, guys. This is the last episode until the one we record in like 5 minutes. That'll go up later. No, I appreciate your work ethic. It's insane. You should be better at moderating it, but it is a benefit to me because I get to be on this podcast and you do all the social media work, and I appreciate that.
Oh, now I'm going to cry. Take us out of here before I cry.
Everybody, thank you for listening to us, especially that last section. I don't know what you're going to timestamp that one.
We normally record for like 4 hours together, but they're broken up. 2 hours, 33 minutes, and 38 seconds and counting so far without ads. This is definitely the longest podcast you and I have ever recorded. And very quickly, I used to, when I would do the team by team look aheads, combine them all. So like there was one time I tried to put up like a 5-hour podcast and it broke people's podcast players by trying to include 4 teams at once. I hope this doesn't. People are like, we can't listen to this. It's 5 hours long.
How do we do 2.5 hours on 15 teams? What's wrong with these guys? If you listen to all this, good job. And you had to have done it on 2x. So go like calm down, because that'll always mess with your brain. Rate, review, subscribe, follow us on our socials, join our Discord, buy our merch. YouTube and podcast description has the links for all that stuff. Tell your friends. Word of mouth is very helpful. Dan always does a very good job. Further compliments of laying all this out at the beginning. I'm sure you're not listening still, but if this wasn't a sufficient explanation of what to do, just listen to the first like 2 minutes of the pod all the time, because you get the same information there. We close as always with a shout out to the one and only Frank Ntilikina and an apology to Jared Allen.